TV.
To the Board of Selectmen for November 27th, 2018. As always, the meeting is being video recorded, and I'll remind you that if you want to talk, make sure you have a microphone so that everybody at home can hear you. We'll begin by taking a moment of appreciation for our troops serving in the Middle East and around the world. Thank you. We have a few announcements to start with. The Medfield Lions Christmas tree sale is going on now, and we'll have a special guest announcer, Medfield Patch Mayor Colleen Sullivan and Lions Club member. Take it away, Colleen. Well, you can go right up to the podium. Get right up to the podium.
Oh, it's working.
You can still go up to the podium.
I prefer this. Yes, thank you, Mike. Just on behalf of the Medfield Lions, I'd just like to let the community know that this year it's over 30 years that Medfield Lions have been selling Christmas trees, but this year we have a new location, and that's sort of why we're trying to get the word out, because we are at the American Legion, not at the Shaw's Plaza this year. So we hope people will support the Medfield Lions, and we're selling trees from 4 to 7 Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sundays from 10 to 5. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen. All right. In addition, the Planning Board has a public hearing on Monday, December 3rd at 8:05 p.m. right here in this very location regarding two matters for this year's annual town meeting, two zoning matters. One is a proposed Upper Spring Street overlay district, and the other is a rezoning of 3 parcels of land near Peter Christoph Way, including the land that the American Legion is currently on, to rezone those as commercial parcels. All right, our first meeting is our annual tax classification hearing with the Board of Assessors. I see the Board of Assessors and Principal Assessor Yvonne Remillard are here, so welcome. And let us begin classification.
Did you want to read the legal notice?
Yes, I will. All right, the legal notice was posted. Attention taxpayers. The Medfield Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 27, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Chenery Meeting Room, 2nd floor, Town Hall, 459 Main Street, for tax classification purposes. The central issue to be discussed during this tax classification hearing is whether, on all 5 classes of property, residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal, shall be taxed at the same rate or at different rates for fiscal year 2019, Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 56. The Board of Assessors will provide relevant information regarding the tax rate, including the fiscal effect of available alternatives. Interested taxpayers are urged to attend the hearing. Written and oral statements from interested taxpayers will be accepted by the Board of Selectmen's office and taken into consideration at the hearing, published in the Medfield Press on November 16th, 2018. Will you now provide relevant information?
I'll try.
All right.
You should declare the hearing open.
And I declare the hearing is now open.
Okay, so I will be brief. Every year by statute, the Board of Selectmen must decide if they want to split the tax rate among the 5 classes of properties. Adopting a residential factor of 1 would ensure a single tax rate for all classes of property. It is the responsibility of the Board of Assessors to provide the Board of Selectmen with relevant information regarding the fiscal effects. Historically, Medfield has always maintained a single tax rate. Of the 6 communities that surround us, only Walpole and Westwood split their rates. Both of these communities have a greater commercial base than Medfield. Walpole has 17% and Westwood has 25.5%. Medfield has 5.5%. So breaking down the numbers, if you want to reference the document I gave you ahead of time, the individual scenario comparison on page 2 of the handout, you can see there is a very small savings for the residential property, while a commercial property with the same assessment would see a considerable increase in their taxes. For those people in the audience, basically with a 10% shift, a property valued at $600,000 would receive a $62 discount for residential, while a commercial property valued at $600,000 would have an increase of over $1,000 added to their tax bill. So historically, Medfield's commercial percentage fluctuates only slightly. As you can see from the chart, which I will read for the audience, This year, the commercial, industrial, and personal property is at 5.46. Last year, it was 5.65. The prior year was 5.47, 5.49, 5.48. So you can see it's pretty steady. We don't have a lot of commercial growth here. With no large changes in the percentages, the Board of Assessors recommends to the Board of Selectmen to vote a residential factor of 1, which would maintain a single tax rate. Do you have any questions?
Pete?
I have no questions. I mean, every year it seems the same logic applies that the single tax rate is the solution for the town of Medfield.
No questions. Anyone? Comments or questions or otherwise? I
Okay.
have no questions either.
Okay, terrific. The only thing I would need you to do is to sign the LA5, and please note the assessment capacity for your.
So you actually have to take a vote to establish that.
We'll get there, right? We'll-
Okay.
Yeah, after you vote, you can sign that. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of you.
All right, is there a motion from anyone to set the tax rate as recommended by the Board of Assessors?
I move that the town of Medfield set the residential tax rate at a factor of 1 as recommended by the Board of Assessors for the upcoming tax year.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
And the approximate rate on that would be approximate, with the emphasis.
The approximate rate is 1787.
We have a second request here with respect to the overlay funds as well.
Yes, the Board of Assessors did take a vote tonight to release overlay funds, if you were going to request that.
So, also move to sign the letter requesting the review. Any questions about that?
Nope.
That's-
What is it? When we released the overlay funds, are these funds that we did not actually have to allocate this year? So we basically, that's what I thought it meant. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
the overlay is what we save for abatements, exemptions, and uncollectible taxes. With the Municipal Modernization Act, we were able to incorporate one large overlay instead of having an overlay for each fiscal year broken out. So what the assessors basically do is we look at the balance every single year, and if we find that there's money that can be released, or if you ask us for that request, and Mike and Joy and I were talking about it, and we knew that request was coming, we can release funds, which you can appropriate at town meeting to use for some purpose. It can be done out of overlay surplus, or if you do not use it, it goes into free cash
Okay.
at the end of the
It does-
year.
It still requires a town meeting.
It requires a town meeting
Use
vote to
that.
spend it,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I move
And
that,
how much are we talking about?
We voted tonight 200,000.
thank you, that's a very important question. Yes. Okay, I move that we vote to sign the request for release of overlay funds as recommended by the Board of Assessors.
Second?
Oh, Mike?
No, go ahead, doing your vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions, or one is that do the selectmen need to sign electronically tonight before they leave?
Yes, or you can sign for them, the LA5, that would be great.
Okay, if they're going to, well, usually I have them go in and sign it, so
Okay.
they do it themselves.
Yes.
The
I
other,
would like-
could you introduce your board? I know all the hard work they do, and I think people
I'm
need to know
sorry.
who is serving on the board, so.
I'm sorry. So my board members are Ken Manning and Jeff Scarry and Tom Sweeney.
Thank you very much for the hard work you do. People don't appreciate how much goes into it, but it's a tough job. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, we have a couple of minutes before our next posted appointment, so we'll try to clear up some of our action items. We have a request from the Zoning Board of Appeals to accept the resignation of Charles Peck as a full member and appoint him as an associate member, and then vote to appoint William McNiff and Michael Whitcher as members of the ZBA. The other vacancy was created by the resignation of Steve Nolan, and we had received his resignation letter a few weeks ago. Anyone have any comments or questions or objections to Mr. McNiff or Mr. Whitcher of any kind? Let's repeat, any comments or questions?
Happy that people are willing to serve.
They've both been associate members of the ZBA, so they've been sitting on these hearings. Anyway, so Gus, if we could have a motion?
I move that we accept the resignation of Charles Peck as a full member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and appoint him as an associate member, and appoint William McNiff and Michael Witcher as full members of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second,
All in favor?
yes.
All right, we've got a number of contracts here from Mo Goulet, a contract with the Padula Brothers in Lancaster, Massachusetts, for the purchase of a John Deere tractor, Tri-County Contractor Supply for the purchase of a flail attachment system to be used with the John Deere tractor. Environmental Partners Group, Quincy, Mass, for consulting services regarding unaccounted for water assessment. Environmental Partners Group of Quincy for consulting service regarding water test pilot report. And Design Consultants Incorporated in Somerville, Massachusetts for stormwater management. So, that's what we have. So Gus or Pete, do you have questions on any of these contracts?
Actually, I have two questions. One specific question on the Padula contract. The warranty indicates a start date of November 5th.
Yep.
So we've got a warranty that's already running on something we haven't.
No, it's just, it'll be, once it's delivered, it'll be under warranty, but the November 5th was from the contract date, that's what it was.
So is it like it's a 1-year warranty or 2-year warranty?
It'll be
So it'll expire, what I'm getting at is, so we've lost a month on a warranty, you know?
It hasn't started yet until we receive the, under contract, it'll say that we get the warranty once it begins, once we accept the
So that makes you,
machine.
so in other words, we get the full warranty. once we've
Correct.
got- Okay. Then the second one is just a general comment about these kinds of contracts.
Mm-hmm.
This is written as, like we have a standard service contract. This is a purchase order. And I don't understand why we use service contract type contract formats for what's effectively, we're just buying a piece of equipment with a warranty, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not really a service contract. Is there any good reason why?
Mark, can you talk to that?
Your town council.
It's a goods and services contract.
Yeah, but why don't we just use a stupid purchase order without
Because
all the
there's a
extra
whole lot of-
words?
There's
We
a whole
don't.
lot of what would be referred to by you as legal boilerplate that I feel needs to be in there, and it's
But this
just,
has got to do with, we can fire them for failure to perform.
well, that's,
And it's
you know,
like-
that's, sometimes that applies when you've got a piece of equipment that's being customized or whatever. So there may be some stuff in there that's irrelevant, but for the most part, it is applicable. Same contracts we use in Franklin. We've been using them for.
I would think it would be just as stupid a thing to do. In other words, when you're buying a piece of equipment, and I speak as somebody who gets these boilerplate contracts, which don't make any sense at all for the work that I'm being hired to do because it's the standard contract. But when you're buying a piece of equipment, a purchase order with what's the piece of equipment, what's it gonna cost us, and is there a warranty, is, to my way of thinking, all you really need, instead of like a 6-page document that's got a bunch of clauses that don't really have relevance. I will defer to our town council if there's a really important reason why this is what we need, but my observation would be, to buy a piece of equipment, when you buy a car, you don't have to pay, you don't have to fill something out like
There
this.
may be one or two that are not relevant, but most of it is applicable.
I made my point, okay. Ready for a motion?
I hope so. I think so. All right.
I recommend that I move that we approve the contract with Padula Brothers in the amount of $72,289.25 to purchase a John Deere tractor.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
Gus, you said you had a question on a second contract? There's
second
two questions
contract.
on one
I
contract.
had two questions on one contract, but give me ones. Yeah, so this one, I don't have any questions beyond that.
I had general interest on this one, just because it's almost as expensive as the tractor, and it
Correct.
sounded like it attaches at the back, but it operates in the
It's the main
front.
part of it, it's the flail mower that's a whole system that we use on the tractor to do all the vegetation on the side of the
Forward
road.
to seeing it, but that's about all. I just,
Yeah,
It's a cool sounding name, though. It sounds very,
I'll make the
medieval.
same point, it should have been a purchase order.
I'll do it however we go.
Ready?
An accepted purchase order is a contract.
Without all the superfluous 6 pages worth of stuff that doesn't mean anything. All right.
We might have to order in for tonight, Christine.
I'm taking orders.
I have more coming later. Okay, I move that we approve the contract with Tri-County Contractors Supply Incorporated, West Springfield, Massachusetts, in the amount of $61,125 for the purchase of a flail attachment system to be used with the John Deere tractor.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
All right, environmental,
Something about a flail attachment, sounds like we could use it for personnel packages or something like that as well.
Environmental Partners Group Quincy, this is the unaccounted for water assessment.
That was the voted at town meeting this past fall. We're just putting the contract together to get that going.
Pete, any questions on this one? Nope. Gus?
How does this, yeah, I had three questions, let's see what's in. First one, how does this relate to the capacity issue on the table for the state hospital property redevelopment?
It's not related to that. The unaccounted for water is water that we pump, that we're not getting credit for.
Yep.
It's either leaks or through our meters. So we're trying to get that water under control.
If we find that that water truly is leaking water as opposed to simply unmetered water that's really
Then
being
we'd have more
used,
capacity.
and that would then have an impact on what the profile is for what we can do to support
Correct.
the state hospital redevelopment.
Yes, but
If we get our leaks down from 25 to 30% down to 10 to 15%, then we should have plenty of water for the hospital.
if it's in
basically.
leaks, we don't feel a lot of it has to do with leaks. We feel a lot of it has to do with older meters that aren't performing well. But there are leaks in our system. There's leaks in every system in every town, but we don't feel there's one large leak that's getting all the unaccounted for water there.
It sounded like like a standard would be more like a 10 to 15% loss.
10 to 15%.
Is that like
usually.
because of water, hydrant flushing and stuff like that?
Yeah, and,
or-
sometimes it, there are leaks in the system that do account for some of that water, so, but there are small leaks and there are large leaks, but we do a leak detection program every year, twice a year, to look for large leaks, and
Okay.
we haven't found too much with that, but we are looking more at replacing the Water and Sewer Board. We were talking about a meter replacement program as well, so that's going to be coming up shortly.
So I guess, Mo, I would ask about that, because I understood that we had this meter replacement ongoing program, and I thought that we had pretty much replaced all the meters.
It's been about 67% of our meters are 15 years and older.
Oh,
So it's been a while since the last meter replacement program has happened, so we're,
so that 67%, are those the ones that are that you can drive by and they're radio
right,
pickups?
we have a van, we're looking for a direct network so we can download the information hourly, daily, so we can see trends for leaks earlier. But right now, we do it by van, so we drive around town. Takes about a week to get everything accomplished, especially when we do the billing. So
Okay, so those meters are then about 15 years old at this point, and we still
Yep.
need to replace them?
meters usually last around 15 years. Once that happens, sometimes they lose their efficiency, and so we want to make sure that all the meters are reading correctly.
Okay.
And so that would mean if it's the meters, the water is actually being pumped and it's going out.
Water's actually
so
being
it's
used,
just not counting it.
correct.
We're not getting paid for it.
Another question I had, how does this affect anything around the town's limits on water usage? In other words, if we,
Once we get the unaccounted for water down, there could be an increase in per capita.
yeah,
So if that's the case, we may have to look into water restrictions, especially a lot of the water that's being used in the town right now is for irrigation. So there could be restrictions in the future that we may have to put in.
and last question,
Sure.
what's the practical effect of us diverting the money for this study on the manganese study?
It's a partial coming from that design, but we still have enough in there to accomplish the preliminary design and move forward with the final design. We just don't have enough on the tail end to finish the final
So
design.
is it just a matter of we'll need to get more money by the town meeting, or does this actually stretch the schedule out for that study?
We would have to get more money at town meeting, but right now, with the Water and Sewer Board, we're discussing whether to table that for a little while longer, depending on, I think we need to do the preliminary design first to find out what kind of plant we need to develop. Right now, we're not really guessing, but we're on the outskirts, where it's an $8 million facility. We're looking at trying to cut that cost down.
So where my questions are coming from is only wanting to be sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid, if we get to the point where we actually start to do redevelopment at the state hospital, the last thing I would want to do is have us find out that we have a capacity constraint on the infrastructure, not on the site. That's a different issue, but that we literally have a core capacity constraint for the town's ability to support development there, to where we're just kind of saying, gee, I guess we can't do it because our pipes are our water supply is too limited, that's all.
I mean, the water supply, I think, at times we are high, but a lot of it has to do with irrigation. And if we can conserve water a little bit better in the town, I think our capacity would be very well established for any kind of development.
Okay, great. That's all I have.
Well, what's the state's current position on the amount of water they want us to use per capita? I know at one time they were...
65 gallons.
65, that's still it? Okay.
Yep.
Charles River Watershed Association wants 50 gallons
Right,
per
they
capita.
want to go down, but.
Oh. 45 from the back of the room. Those at home that can't hear.
I think the average nationally is something like 90 gallons per person per day, but Massachusetts is going to be out in front, I guess, so, according to these organizations. So you've got one agency telling you you've got to build 440,000 housing units in Massachusetts, Eastern Mass, by 2030 or 2040. And another agency saying you don't have enough water to supply these people, but they don't talk to each other. And that's one of the biggest problems with state government. You've got agencies with different missions, and they don't care what the other agencies are thinking. And so you're getting conflicts that are going to be impossible to resolve between how do you supply the housing that one agency wants and supply the water that another agency says you can't have.
And I know from that meeting that you and I went to, Mike, years ago, about the Charles River Watershed Association, which is an entity that you'd think would have our best interest in mind, but their real interest at that meeting was to have the right type of fish in the Charles River. They wanted river fish instead of the pond fish that are there now. And when everybody explained to the people from DEP and Charles River Watershed that the flow rates at the various places that it's recorded haven't changed over time, and that it's really not an issue of the amount of water in the Charles River, it's the dams that have been built that prevent the river fish from getting into the river.
And then they want to tear out the dams so the fish can swim up the river. That will dry up a tremendous amount of wetlands and make that land available for building because it will no longer be wet.
There's a fish ladder at the dam where Route 16 goes over the Charles in Newton, Wellesley, Lower Falls. But it's it's like a 6-8 foot rise there. I can't imagine many fish getting up that.
Do we have any other questions on the contract?
What contract?
Mr. Massaro, a question on the contract?
Yeah, just a nit.
No, microphone. Come on, Bill.
It's a nit, but. The estimated completion date on page 4 of the contract says May 1st, 2018. So I think if you read down into the assumptions on that same page, it says it will complete in the spring of 2019. So I suspect that should be May of 2019. Like I said, just a nit.
Yep, that should be 2019.
I just had a question, since you're talking about water, about the wastewater treatment plant. Is that in good condition to, take care of all this building that's going on? When I was driving down West Street, I know with all the rain that we had, I definitely smelled sewage, and I just wondered about the condition of that treatment plant. Is it the age of it, and with all the building that's proposed, the state hospital and everything else going on in town, are we okay with that?
That's going to have to be studied a little bit further to see what the capacity is that's going to be coming from the state hospital, but those studies haven't been conducted yet.
So
And if it isn't large enough, the state will tell you enlarge it.
We also have an issue, or possible.
Microphone,
issue.
Bill.
Yep, I got it.
Oh, good, okay.
I was anticipating.
Yeah, okay.
We also have a question about the infrastructure going from the bottom of Hospital Road to the wastewater treatment plant regarding the hospital. So while we may have sufficient capacity at the plant. We still haven't looked at whether we have the infrastructure to get to the plant from the hospitals.
The interconnections have to be studied, for sure.
But one way or the other, we probably should account for our unaccounted for water. So are there questions on this contract? Do we have a motion with respect to this contract?
I move that we vote to approve a contract with Environmental Partners Group of Quincy, Massachusetts for consulting services regarding unaccounted for water. The fee amount not to exceed $43,100 with the correction to the due date of May 1st, 2019, not 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Yep.
And then we have another contract with Environmental Partners Group, Quincy, Mass. This relates to a water test pilot report.
That is for the iron and manganese test pilot for well 3. We're looking to finish up that project to get more information from the test pilot. We need the report now, and that's what that contract's for.
Any questions about this contract?
Just to comment, all those questions I asked you about the first Environmental Partners contract were actually questions about this one. And the only other comment I'd make is that it sounds like with this test pilot, from what I got from the contract, that would potentially expand our capacity by 1 million gallons per day, is what I think I read in the.
For the,
If we can figure out how to make this work right, it would be about a $1 million. So only because I'm worried about capacity issues.
Right.
I paid attention to that.
You can have the capacity, but the state says you can't use it.
the limit what we can draw out of there.
So, if we can get to a political dimension to this rather than a physical dimension, that'll be.
But we haven't asked the state to increase our capacity in a very long time, so by getting the water, unaccounted for water under control and different things that we're doing, we're trying to get DEP to put us in good favor.
I move that we vote to approve a contract with Environmental Partners Group of Quincy, Massachusetts for consulting services regarding the water test pilot report, a fee amount not to exceed $19,260.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
All right. Finally, design consultant, Somerville, Mass. for stormwater management.
So our stormwater management permit is activated July 1st. We do every year, we do a stormwater management to comply with our stormwater permit. And this is the consultant we've been using for the past so many years to keep us in compliance with that. So they help us with all different aspects of the permit.
Questions, Pete?
No.
I have a motion, but could I make one administrative comment about the prior contract? I think it's actually all of them. Paragraph 15, we should get rid of, again, a boilerplate, should get rid of the first two words. I didn't print it out, but if you look at the very first sentence of paragraph 15, if you just delete the first two words, the sentence makes sense. It says the same thing, it's just the sentence, the way it's worded now isn't worded right. Back to this contract, I move that we vote to approve a contract with Design Consultants Incorporated of Somerville, Massachusetts for stormwater management, fee not to exceed $20,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Mo.
Could I just ask a question of the director before he leaves? I know that,
He's going to be back later. He's not gone for good.
do you want me to hold my question?
No, go ahead.
It has to do with the, you were meeting with PAR Engineering, was it?
Fire engineering for the Danielson Pond Dam.
And did you figure out a solution to
So
the
we're
issues?
working with the Conservation Commission to make a decision on, to go with the proposal that PAR had given us. We're trying to get away from the consent order, and if PAR Engineering thinks that the dam is not in dire
I'm
need.
thinking of a different issue, Mo. I was thinking of the issue up at the state hospital with the infrastructure or something. There was something about that came up through the Water and Sewer Board about as it related to the reuse of the Medfield State Hospital, and you were meeting, I thought it was with PAR, who had provided services to the Medfield State Hospital.
No, I think there was
Planning
talk about looking into the interconnections further down to see if it would have the capacity, but that still hasn't been studied.
Committee. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mo. All right. So a little late for our 7:15 appointment, but welcome Robert Borelli to present relevant information to the Board of Selectmen regarding the application for a proposed affordable housing project at 996 Adams Street, a LIP project. And so, Mr. Murphy, before you start, my just first question to you is, are you asking for us to vote on this tonight, or is this just sort of a preliminary presentation?
We are actually hoping that you would vote on it tonight, but if in fact you determine that you need us to respond to something that we can't and need to come back, then obviously will be responsive to that request.
Okay, great. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with your presentation, questions from the board, questions from the audience, comments, then we'll discuss, and if we're prepared to vote, we'll vote. If not,
You'll let us know.
We'll let you know. Right, so, well, why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you very much. James Murphy. I represent Medfield Holdings. Bob Borelli is the principal. As some of you may know, Mr. Borelli has come before the town to develop LIP projects before. He's developed a project at 67 North Street, which is 8-unit rental. He's currently constructing 71 North, which is also 8 units rental. Each of them have 2 affordable units. The 67 North property is fully rented. The 71 North property is under construction with hopes that it'll be completed by the end of March and rented for the beginning of April. We've had a lot of interest for that property already, which I think is representative of the good work that he has done and being responsive to the needs of the community. So he has identified additional property on Adams Street, in which he's also looking to do a LIP project. This one is slightly different in that it is going to be a sale project as opposed to a rental. There are duplexes. There are 8 duplexes, each duplex having 2 units, for a total of 16 units, of which 4 would be affordable. Initially, he was contemplating having a mix of age-restricted and non-age restricted, but after communications with the Affordable Housing Trust Committee members, he made the project completely over 55, age-restricted. And it was really kind of a recognition that the town was looking to see whether or not it could have some more diverse housing opportunities, particularly for the over 55 population. Although initially the design of the project, which may have slipped into your package originally, showed a bedroom on the second floor, a master on the second floor, all the masters were put on the first floor to accommodate the over 55 preference. And there was initially a neighborhood meeting, as we have referred to, at the public safety meeting, and after we got some comments, we made some other changes, and we met twice with the Affordable Housing Trust in August and September. We responded to a lot of the questions, hopefully answered some of them, provided some additional information which are included in your packet. And since that time, Mr. Truax from GLM Engineering has done some additional work. There's a slightly different site plan up there that reflects a slight change in the placement of the 8 units, which I'll let Mr. Truax explain. It's related in some parts to the wetlands and the isolated land subject to flooding determinations. But the essence of the project remains the same, that we really think it's going to be a very good use of this land, and it's going to be a type of housing that the town really would like to see. We have also provided the list of waivers that we would likely seek. We've also prepared some of the forms that we would include with the DHCD application. We have had good success with DHCD. They've been very responsive to us in the past. Usually what happens is that we prepare a preliminary application, they give us some comments, and they've been very quick to respond. In fact, in the past, they have actually used one of Mr. Borelli's projects as examples to other communities as to what should be constructed, recognizing that there's really a benefit in affordable housing of having smaller developments like this, the 8s, the 16s, as opposed to the much larger ones that sometimes create a little bit more upset in the community. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Truax. He probably can get a microphone from somebody on that side, and then we can get you on both ends with the microphones and answer the questions that may relate to this project.
Thank you. For the record, Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants. So since our last meeting with the community, we did make some changes to the plan, and that was primarily based on the wetland areas that are on the site. We hired a botanist, which was Ecotech. Paul McManus went out to the site, evaluated the area. So we show on this board that's up here, you can see there's 3 wetland areas shown.
Can you just move that so the neighbors can see the board, please?
Why don't we can put a couple up here and pass these along to people.
Can you guys still see that?
Yeah, if you give us these, you can turn the big one around
Yeah.
and we can cover it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
why don't you turn that one that way, because we can look on with these, and
So he went out to the site and he identified 3 areas that are considered wetlands. So you can see on the board, they're highlighted here and shaded in green. The areas are what would be considered isolated land subject to flooding. They're not a bordering vegetated wetland. They're not connected to each other. They don't discharge out of the site. They're just isolated in those areas by themselves. They do have wildlife within them. They do support water. They do support vernal pool habitat. They're not certified vernal pools at this time. Just to give you an idea of what that means from a wetland standpoint, I went over this with him in detail. So under the DEP Wetland Protection Act, these are classified as isolated land subject to flooding. Under the Act, there's no buffer zone associated with these wetlands. So if we were just to file this plan and go forward and only have to file with DEP and not the local bylaws, this would not even require filing on the DEP Wetland Protection Act because we're not in any buffer zones. The wetlands are isolated. They're less than 10,000 square feet of water. So that doesn't, they have to be over 10,000 square feet to become a pond. They have to be connected to an overall wetland area, either via a culvert under the railroad or culverts to each other, in order to become a bordering vegetated wetland. So they don't qualify as that. Under the local bylaw, however, isolated land subject to flooding is protected. The town bylaws require a minimum 50-foot no disturb buffer from any wetland area, whether it's isolated, bordering vegetated wetland, marsh, et cetera, river. And they also require an additional 100 feet of protected area from any vernal pool. So
Can you just go back and repeat? I'm sorry.
what would you like me to repeat? Which portion?
The bylaw part, the town bylaw part.
So the town bylaw protects isolated land subject to flooding, regardless of what the DEP says. It comes under your local bylaw. And in that bylaw, you have a 50-foot no disturb from any edge of wetland. So from the edge of this wetland out under the bylaw, there'd be a 50-foot no disturb. Can't touch it, can't build in it, can't cut the trees down. In addition to that, under any vernal pools, they require an additional 100-foot buffer. The vernal pool itself would not be that line that you see on the paper. It would be somewhere inside that because it would be the level of the water, not necessarily the edge of the vegetated area. So with those 2 things in mind, that for this project to go forward, just to be straight up with you folks, this will require relief from the local bylaw. However, no relief on the DEP would be required. So as a result of these areas that were flagged, I think on the original plan, you probably don't have it in front of you, but there was a unit located. There were 3 units as you came down. There was a 3rd unit in this area. And what we did was we took this unit, moved it, and put it down here on the cul-de-sac. So we now have 2 on the cul-de-sac. I think we just had 1 here last time. We also took this parking area, which was located right here in a close proximity to this wetland, and slid it up in that area. This dark green area here, there's a 50-foot buffer line on your plan. That dark green line meanders in and out of that. There's definitely a 25-foot no disturb from these wetlands shown on this plan. There's probably anywhere from 35 to 50 no disturb as it meanders throughout around the site, just so you know what the setbacks are from the wetlands.
Help me understand the map. You said the dark green line is the 50-foot buffer?
No, it meanders through that. It goes in and out. So we're giving about a 35 to 50-foot buffer.
So the dark green is the buffer you're proposing, and it
This
runs
dark
from
green would be the
35 to
buffer
50 feet.
proposed, correct.
Okay,
So I get down in this end here, you can see this is 50 feet.
yeah.
And then as you come up through around here, you're getting closer to 35 and around these buildings.
Board of Appeals jurisdiction.
carry on. Or are you done?
I'm done.
Oh, you're
So
done.
Any
Okay.
questions?
We'll start with questions from the board. Gus, do you have further questions?
No. No, maybe, no,
Not at this point.
not this one.
Pete, do you have any questions?
I don't think so at this point.
Okay, so now we'll take questions from folks who are, Mike, anything?
Yeah, could I ask the price range of the affordable and the market units?
So I think the pro forma, we put them at, the market was at 600,000 and the affordable was about 240,000.
Thank you.
Anything else? Christine? All right, so if we have questions or comments,
And these all are age restricted?
Yes,
55 and older.
yes.
So questions or comments, you either need a microphone or to come up and kick Mr. Murphy out from behind the lectern. And I would just ask, if you just for the record, just identify yourself and where you live before you ask your question.
Tricia Cook, next door, 94 Adams. When you're talking about the 50-foot no disturb and 100-foot buffer, you're just relating to the protected, isolated land, the isolated flooding? You're not talking about if there is a vernal pool there? If there's a vernal pool there, then it increases, is that correct?
You'll have to go there. Should get a second roving microphone for these meetings.
So the local bylaw says if it's a vernal pool, that they go 100 feet from a vernal pool.
And this is 25 feet. Is that
Ranges
right?
from 25 to 50, correct.
And these three are each a vernal pool?
At least two of them we classify as vernal pools. The limits of the vernal pool are not shown. They'd be somewhat less than what's shown on the plan. Probably not a great deal, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet. Because it would be the actual water, not the border.
And if I understood you right, what I think you said was that by state law, state regulations, none of these are regulated at all because they're isolated and they're not of sufficient size to actually qualify for state level
So they'd be, correct.
regulatory protection. So we are strictly talking about local bylaws that go above and beyond what the state requires.
That's correct.
Okay.
From what I read about the state law and the Medfield law, both are the same. 50 and 100 feet.
But apparently not in this circumstance, I guess.
As was indicated, the local bylaw has broader resource areas defined than the state. There's other things that the town bylaw protects, as indicated, isolated wetlands subject to flooding and vernal pools, which the state doesn't protect at all. So it's not the buffers as much as whether it's even a recognized resource area.
Other questions?
Is conservation going to be involved in having to look at this?
Yes.
The local bylaw would be under 40B, all, the zoning board of appeals takes jurisdiction over all local bylaw applications and waivers. They would, I assume, reach out to conservation, and conservation would certainly have the right to provide the zoning board of appeals with input. And then the zoning board of appeals would make the decision as to what the final determination would be. If there was jurisdiction under the State Wetlands Act, then conservation wears two hats. They enforce the State Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaw. So if there were any resources recognized by the state, then there would have to be a separate filing with conservation, but apparently there aren't.
So Mark, as a practical matter for tonight, for what's before us, if we were to approve this, that would be a 40B comprehensive permit. If we approved it with the waivers that you're requesting, does that effectively take conservation out of it? Because we would have already approved the waiver of...
You're not approving the waivers, you're just supporting the petition. It still has to go to the zoning board of appeals. They're not deprived of jurisdiction here.
Okay.
So this is just endorsing as a LIP project to go to DHCD, then to ZBA.
Would you consider, instead of a LIP project, you make it a senior initiative and just lessen the amount of building you do back there? Because you're talking about 32 more cars going in and out of that whole area. And if you did half of that, the amount of money that the building would make and the cost and everything seems to come out to about the same.
So what
If it
is
were
this?
if it were not a lip.
What is this zone for by right, Bob? Do you know? RS. So you think you could get how many? 6?
No,
3.
Three.
So I think the most that could be built there would be 3.
Duplexes?
No, 3.
No single families.
3 singles. Yeah. So I don't think under the current zoning you couldn't build 8.
What about
I would
duplex?
just note that the bylaw that was just defeated at town meeting had potential application to these types of parcels and would have provided an alternative to doing the 40B.
Nevertheless, it was defeated at town meeting and therefore is not an option. So, other comments, Kevin?
Kevin Stoddard, 6 Baker Road. As a homeownership project, this gives us 4 units for affordability. Coming online in next May or next spring, we already have 27 units from North Meadows. It would be great if we could get to 42 units and get 2 years' worth of 21 units. Right now, we don't have that. So adding 16 homeownership units to give us only 4 for affordability only adds 4 to the gross total that we're looking for. Does that make sense? Doesn't help us to get to 2 years worth of...
From a 40B standpoint, it does. From a senior housing standpoint, that's not the only issue. There's, the senior housing demand is not necessarily exclusively 40B senior housing. It has more to do with format. So age-restricted housing would help the town from a senior housing standpoint, independent of that.
Right, but it would be much more beneficial if we could get another 11 units coming online next year. And part of the point is, could this project work on a rental basis, age-restricted, with the same number of units? You're going to get the same type of clientele, to help the town out on a 40B basis, to get 2 years' worth of coverage to allow the Rose Bay project time to come online.
That's a question for Mr. Borelli.
You need the microphone.
Microphone, or you can go up there. Whatever.
We really haven't studied the economics or anything like that. We went with the Affordable Housing Trust. It was right from the get-go to sell these units as 4 affordable and 12 marketable.
How are you? I'm Susan McCusker. I live at 92 Adams. Have you taken a look to see whether this is going to be a public road or a private road? I know we talked about this once before, and you didn't. I don't think we got an answer from you.
I mean, I would assume it would start private and you'd try to get it accepted by the town. Is that the?
Say that I couldn't hear you. I'm
So
sorry.
typically with these developments, it starts owned by the developer, and then the developer makes an application to town meeting
Yeah.
to get it accepted as a public way. And if town meeting accepts it as a public way, it eventually becomes a public road. Usually that happens after all the houses are sold.
Okay, so that's the first thing I want to know. The second thing I want to know, if you look at where our street is situated, I'm really asking you to take a look at the whole, the building that's going to go on around our street between Dale Street, our street, where the Legion is. There is going to be so much construction going on around us in the next couple of years. It is really a lot. I'm asking you to really look at it. And I don't know what the big rush is all of a sudden in the next couple of years to do all these projects. If you have an idea in your head as why all of a sudden all this construction, can you tell us why?
Well, I can give you the big, not as to this project in particular. So we'll get
I'm not saying
specifics.
this project
Yeah,
in particular,
so-
but all of a sudden it seems like right around our street.
Right. Well, it's kind of
and
work.
next to the school, what's going on?
Right. So as you may recall, a couple of years ago, there was the proposed Medfield Meadows project.
Right, which you got defeated.
Right. And so the strategy we adopted after that was to adopt what's called a housing production plan.
Mm-hmm.
And what that lets you do is, if Mr. Stoddard referenced it, if you bring on 21 what are called subsidized SHI units, affordable units per year under the housing production plan, you stay in safe harbor under 40B. And so if we are currently in safe harbor, and we are projected to remain in safe harbor at least through May of 2020. And that's really why we're having this meeting at all. I mean, if we had not done that, Mr. Borelli would make his application directly to the ZBA, and whether the ZBA liked it or not, I would give it a 99.8% chance of if the ZBA said no, the State Housing Appeals Committee would reverse it and put it through. And so because we're in safe harbor, we have the opportunity to decide at this point as the Board of Selectmen whether to support it as a LIP project. Which means essentially a friendly 40B. So it proceeds under the 40B rules. It does not have to comply with the town's entire zoning bylaw, but it's something that we've decided is appropriate. The state has to approve it, the ZBA has to approve it. So the rush of building, the reason it's happening is in an effort to comply with that housing production plan. So the first year we did 21 units, the second year we did 24. We've got 27 coming up that will be approved in May at the Dale Street project that will cover us through May of 2020. And so Mr. Stoddard was referencing you sort of move in increments of 21 based on the total number of housing units. It's got to be 0.5% of our total housing stock every year. And so if you got to 42 units, you could then get safe harbor through May of 2021, an extra year on top of that, because there'll
But
be.
you can, because, I mean, the Legion is going to be 45, I think, and the one behind us is, so.
All understood. I'm just giving you the factual answer to your question as to why this is happening. And none of those are approved yet either.
No, but they're moving along,
Right,
and so there's
right.
going to be a lot in a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Right. Well, I can assure you, for me personally, I am taking that into account.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope that you're really, asking questions and you're not just rubber stamping these through, because it's hard on us.
Yeah.
The neighbors, it's noisy, it's loud, it's early in the morning, it's it's rough on our streets. I mean, listen, I'm going to speak for myself, but we do not live in do not live in the wealthy part of Medfield. Our streets don't get, repaved all the time. They patch them. I mean, we don't have, town sewage like some of the wealthy, I'm speaking for myself, how I feel. We've all lived there for a long time. I'm elderly now, I have to say it. And it's a lot on us. So I really hope you take into consideration how I feel.
I will.
Have you looked at, more police, more fire, more teachers for all these? I mean, is there a plan? Are we going to have an override every year? Is there money in the budget for
Well,
all
we have plenty of fire, that I can assure you. So that there's plenty of firefighters. We're well covered on.
Well,
So.
what about teachers? I mean, not all these are going to be 55 and over and have children,
Well, it is age restricted. I mean, the homeowner's got to be
That's it,
55.
but they're not all going to be age restricted. The new one next to the hardware store isn't age restricted.
Right.
So, I mean, are we going to be facing an override every year?
I sure hope not.
Well, I
Right.
mean, is there a plan?
I mean, with respect to these 16 units?
No, like for all of them. I mean, if you look at the page, if you look at there's 573 units in total. I mean, I know I haven't broken it down between how many are 55 and age restricted or not.
Yeah, I
There's
mean-
a lot going on, and I hope you seriously, take your time, not just vote every single time someone comes before you.
Well, we haven't. I mean, we are seriously taking a lot of our time on this.
seriously.
And so, I
Okay,
mean, the
but-
units you're listing are
I understand.
all the potential projects, including the highly speculative number of units at
Okay.
Medfield State Hospital. So of the 573, you can put 320 of them in very, very light pencil,
Okay.
in
Okay.
terms of the likelihood of them actually happening.
I feel better
So,
now that I-
to
that I-
Laurel.
I'd like to just make one comment. This is
Okay.
a broader, there's one issue around 40B. That's what Mike just described. Speaking for myself, the one thing that's on top of 40B, based on what we've heard from seniors,
Yes.
is the absence of senior housing. So one of the things that was interesting about you all coming in regard to this age-restricted project, which was intended to build senior housing, was that at least some of you were self-identified as seniors,
Yeah.
speaking against the development of senior housing. And I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but I can tell you, I would definitely appreciate hearing more inputs from seniors on what exactly they have in mind, because at the special town meeting, the Hinckley property, which was the first senior project that we wanted to undertake, didn't go anywhere. this one is probably the next one that would be the quickest senior housing. And I'm not bringing this up to argue for this specific project. What I'm getting at is, to your point, there's been a pretty strong voice in town that has said, we need more senior options for seniors to be able to stay here. And I think I could speak for all three of us that we took that as a sincere statement, as something we should be working on. It's just that when you get to something specific, whoever's close to it isn't as keen about it as if it was somewhere else. And it's actually a little hard to figure out how to move that forward.
The problem with this one is, this wasn't initially age restricted, so we don't want up and down. That's the problem with this one, okay? And then that they moved the master downstairs, okay? And then there's 2 bedrooms upstairs. That's what we live in. We all live in multi-level houses now. So when we bought them when we were 30, it was great. But now we have to move because we don't want stairs.
I mean,
So
I think
that's the problem with this one.
With the senior piece of it, I mean, I think the demand as reflected is much greater than is going to be satisfied by a 16-unit project, right? So if you're looking at a 16-unit project, it's only going to satisfy 16 homeowners, right? So people who want something different aren't going to buy these. And so I think when we look at this project, and we'll go to Laurel next, I mean, I think we've got to resist the temptation to think that this is the only thing that would ever get built, and if this is not exactly what I would want, we shouldn't do it this way, right? There's got to be a little bit of different things. Some people want to rent, some people want to buy. So just again, that's not to say we should do this, but just as you think about it, no project of this small size, which is 16 units in a town of 4,400 housing units, is going to have a massive impact on the demand for senior housing one way or the other. Laurel.
Laurel Scotty, 10 Green Street. I held my breath when 67 North Street was going up, and I was pleasantly surprised. Mr. Borelli did an excellent job, and I know I've become friends with one of the residents, and it was very well done. As far as 96 Adams goes, we have a preponderance of rental properties already going up in that neighborhood, and turning this into a rental development is just not appropriate. It should be owner-occupied. There's rental. There'll be rental next to the Goddard School. There'll be rental across the street from it. There's rental on North Street. We've got enough in that particular section of town. So to change it to a rental is just not appropriate and not respectful for the residents in that particular area.
I'm also aging, heading retirement, and I live at 79 Adams Street. I'm Thecla Gordon. And on that road, there's heavy traffic. There's a lot of big businesses at the far end, down where the project is going. Actually, one of the contractors killed my dog this past year. That was heartbreaking because of speeding. And so my concerns is speed and traffic and lighting and sidewalks and water pressure. I mean, we bought our home to retire there. I don't have money to go live anywhere else. So it would be nice to make it more safe and have like a speed restriction, better lighting, have sidewalks. We're older. We have to walk on the street. My son will live with me the rest of my life. He was hit by a car on 109 and suffered blindness and a stroke at 18. So I have him to care for. He doesn't walk out a lot, but I am worried about that in the heavy traffic. And a lot of people go right through that West Street, North, the corner of Adam. They just fly through that stop sign at that intersection. So that there's more to be considered,
Well, that'll probably be true whether we do this or not, right? I mean, we have been making some efforts and progress on the traffic enforcement side. Probably not as much as anyone would like or as much as we would like, but that has been a focus for us this year.
My request or thoughts would it be possible to have an exit and entry for that end to go down around by the gravel pit, in and out that way? Could there be a direction that people enter safely in and out of to protect the already heavy traffic by just the neighbors that live on Adams? It's just a thought. Could there be
Do you mean out onto West Mill Street?
Yeah. Yes. I am.
It's a long. Yeah.
Make it like one way or something. I'm just throwing it out for safety, because there's so much businesses that come and go with heavy trucking, and adding 32 more cars, it's dead-ended or something, I don't know. I'm just throwing out thoughts in getting lighting and a sidewalk for us to walk our pets,
Understood.
We do, prior to this project, have plans to put a sidewalk in on one side of Adams Street from Dale Street to West Mill, and eventually up West Mill into White House Road. It will take a number of years, but we have the right-of-way, we have the drainage easements, and we are planning to do that regardless of whether this project is approved or not.
Another question. For a 55 over project, are they going to be handicap accessible, which they should be?
You have a microphone. Can you give Bob a microphone here?
I think at least some of them.
Depends on the number of units. I think it's maybe it'll be over 25 or something, I'm not sure.
You're not required to have handicap units for a project with under 22 units.
Okay. So the answer to that is no.
No.
No. Okay.
Regardless, you're still trying to sell to people over 55, which would make sense to make them handicap accessible. Whether it's required or not. Just a thought. Also, how many parking spaces are you going to have for guests? Are you going to allow for that?
What do we have for parking?
Each unit has enough space for 3 cars. Then we put the additional parking on the side. The roadway is 24 feet. Someone could essentially park on the side of the road or in the cul-de-sac, so if there was overflow. That's generally an overview of parking.
So if there's 8, there's not enough for a guest for each unit.
Excuse me?
If there's only 8 additional spaces, there's not a guest parking for each unit.
If there's 3 spaces, there probably is.
Right, they have 1 in and 2
Oh,
out.
okay, one, okay. One in each unit, okay. Also, on the site acquisition that you did the last time, you said that the site acquisition was $863,000. But on the form that you filled out for the DHCD, whatever it is, it says $663,000. So I was just wondering what's the difference?
It's a typo. It was supposed to be 863. Thank you for catching
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Yeah, we already.
Any other?
Susan McCuskey, I just have one question. Is there any way we can have temporary speed bumps down if everything else doesn't go through? Listen, every board that we've gone through, they want to do something about the stopping at this stop. I mean, we've heard of this all before, and nothing ever gets done. So is there any way we can have like temporary speed bumps at our end of the street? I mean, trucks have taken the wires off my house twice. I've lost my power, and I'm not just talking about me, but I mean, they go flying down our street, and we have young children in our neighborhood again. So, I mean, there has to be something that can stop those cars and motorcycles from flying down our street. I mean,
We can write them more tickets.
oh, come on.
Remind them next time the
Now
police
you
chief is
really,
back.
now you're really pushing it. But, I mean, even a couple of them will slow.
Yeah. Well, I know Mo has looked at the speed bump issue in different neighborhoods, and I'm sure he's thrilled he came tonight. Do you want to speak at all to that, to the speed bumps? It's a DPW question in the first instance, but.
We did look into speed bumps, and there is a lot of rules and regulations putting into speed bumps. There's a lot of liability to the town, there's maintenance to the town, as far as permanent speed bumps. It opens the door for the whole town to have speed bumps everywhere.
Even the temporary ones?
Temporary ones, I mean, we could look into temporary ones, but we look more into permanent ones, and they become an issue in a lot of different areas. I know people want the speeds to go down, but I don't feel that it's a a very good alternative to the speed. It's not, a lot of times it's not the right place. People get hurt, there's a liability to it, there really is, and there's a lot of towns that put them in that want to take them out. So there's a lot of different things you have to look at. So it's not just controlling speed, there's a lot of other things, cost as well to it. So.
Well, then get the police to come and sit, do something has to
We're
be
trying.
done.
We're trying. All right, any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry,
Um,
I'm so sorry, just one more, I'll just be brief. Would there be any possibility, I know that the units will have public sewer, usage. Would there be a chance that that end of Adam Street from, 78 down, that we could have hook up to public sewer? Sewer?
Mo,
No.
once again?
I don't know.
That would have to be something we would have to add to our capital plan. With the Water and Sewer Board, we can discuss whether or not that's a viable option and if something that we could put into our 20-year capital plan as it stands.
Well, how close is the sewer to that area?
I'm,
Shaw's house. It starts at 96 now.
It would still have to be added to our capital plan to see if it's viable for us to put into the next,
So it has to be
upcoming
added to the capital plan for...
I thought there was a plan to go to the whole town.
We do have certain areas that we have on our capital plan now, but not all the areas, so. But it's something that we could look at, though.
So is the sewer then
That's-
just to
that's
the
not
left of this entrance for this project?
It's the house he bought.
Yeah, there's a house there now.
So I think, my understanding of the way the sewer works, that if the neighborhood wants the sewer, then the neighborhood pays for the sewer, basically. And if you're all willing to pay the $30,000 betterment or whatever it is for the sewer, I think that's how it's worked in other parts of town, hasn't it, Mike?
Yeah.
Betterment's virtually the whole cost of the sewer, which has been $30,000 in other parts of
Although the
town.
town upfronts the money over the construction period, say a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and the betterments are generally paid back over 10, 15, 20 years. So there's a lag time where the town is supporting the construction. Eventually it catches up, but it's, initially there is a town
And
support
hasn't it
for it.
been running around $30,000 for the betterments?
It depends on whether you need a pump station, what the. I've seen them go anyway. When, again, and I don't mean to keep emphasizing this, although I do, when I started here 44 years ago, the federal government picked up 75% of the cost of installing sewers. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts picked up 15%, and the town paid 10%, so there was very low betterment. Federal government now pays nothing. They regulate you, they fine you, they threaten you, and the state pays virtually nothing. So you're on your own, and the town has had to shift the cost from the state and federal government so they can build airports in God knows what foreign countries they get blown up 2 weeks later. To the taxpayers to pay for your infrastructure needs. What the federal government, you people need to wake up and find out what's going on in the federal and the state government, how they're spending your tax dollar money, because we're struggling to try to come up with the money to replace money that they used to provide, federal revenue sharing, sewer money, water money. We don't get any of that anymore, and that's why your property taxes are going up, to pay for all these services that the federal government won't spend. They just prefer to go out and borrow it or force the cities and towns to do it with mandated programs. And you better find out what's going on at the state, federal level before the country goes into another depression.
The other issue with regard to...
I'm just going to say, just on this, I mean, I don't want to get too far into geopolitics and macroeconomics and sewer policy away. None of those problems are going to be addressed by this project, one way or the other. So if we could just get back, did you comment about this project, Pete?
It was about the sewer.
Okay. I would say on the sewer extension, that's a terrific issue, and I would direct you once again to Mogul A and the Board of Water and Sewerage, because we can't address that through this project either. We do have other stuff to do, and other people want to comment on this, so I'd like to get it just back to this topic.
Could
Laurel.
I just ask a quick question about this? Mike, you said that the town supports it over a period while the property owner kind of pays it back. Is that an interest-free loan?
No, what normally happens, we have to go out and float a bond issue and pay interest on those bonds, and they're usually payable back in 20 principal installments and annual interest payments. And the betterment assessments are usually not made till the project is completed, total costs are in. And so that can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And then people have a year to select an option. They can pay it off all at once. They can pay it off over 5, 10, or 20 years, I believe, in annual assessments added to their tax bill. And there's a 5% interest charge on that annual assessment.
The other point that I was going to make about the sewers is that as part of that project, the town repaves your street and charges you for the cost of repaving the street as part of the betterment.
Okay, any other comments on this project?
One more.
Sure.
Senior initiative. I thought that the zoning board would be helpful in, how do you say, bypass some of the zoning laws in order to do a senior initiative.
No, that's what we had tried to do at town meeting this year with the overlay district to permit that, and that was voted down. So right now, it's zoned RS, so residential suburban, and it's got to comply with those bylaws, and I don't think the ZBA could give a variance for additional units or additional site. Yeah, there's no use variances.
Oh, I'm so sad to hear that.
Yeah, that's why we had proposed the overlay district, but
Yeah.
that's not happening, so it would only be 3 units is the most you could do there otherwise. Mr. Stoddard?
Sorry, I just want to speak again in a comment that you made, Gus. And what I kept hearing from the Medfield seniors is that they don't want to pay $600,000 for a home. And I'm wondering if there's any data on the Larkin project on North Street, the Larkin project at the hospital, on who is buying the $600,000, $700,000 units. Are they Medfield seniors, or are we going to be given an exemption to a builder to allow people from Dover, Sherborne, wherever, to come and buy property, in this new development?
Well, the Larkin
But it's
project
not
is not a senior project.
I know it's not a senior project, but some of it's going to be very appealing to seniors because they have first floor master bedrooms. They have a small footprint. They're condo type of units that seniors are looking for. Are we satisfying Medfield seniors with $600,000 condos, or are we kind of subsidizing other seniors from out of town to come to Medfield and buy these properties? So my only point is, if we're going to be giving an exemption, presumably to get 4 more units, which don't help us in the time frame that these will go up, it adds 4 units to the gross total. That's not that helpful, right? If we need to get to X hundreds of units, that's 4 towards that. The hospital should be providing that down the road. So before we allow an exemption for this, I think that should be taken into consideration. Yes, seniors want to have housing, loud and clear. They don't want to pay more than $450,000 for their units.
You covered a lot of ground with that whole statement, so let me throw at least a couple of points back. And some of this is we're still sorting out. As you know, we did a senior housing survey, and the committee, I've been, I guess informally, I wound up as the member of the committee from the Board of Selectmen, and we're slow getting the study finalized, but we have looked at it. One of the things that was interesting came out of the study was that the total demand for senior housing is not senior 40B housing, because a lot of seniors in town don't qualify for 40B because the equity they have built up in their houses basically disqualifies them for 40B. So that's the first issue, is it's not just a matter of putting up 40B and making it senior 40B. It's actually a matter of putting up non-40B housing that's in a format that's friendly for seniors. So to the point that was made in the back there about, is it easy for seniors to get, whether it's handicapped accessible or not, is it senior friendly or not? And that has to do with things like whether you have to step up to get in the door and lots of things like that. The price range, based on the survey results of what that senior-friendly housing could be, from what we saw in the survey, is probably something that would range anywhere from 350,000, perhaps up to as high as 500, or maybe even up to 600,000. For some seniors, a $600,000 house is affordable. The problem is they can't find a house, even at that price, that is formatted in a way that makes it easy for a senior to live in. So my point in that isn't that we want $600,000 senior homes, it's that we're not really pegged to some super low price. We actually have some degree of flexibility to get to senior housing in a format that's good for seniors, that's, let's say, upwards of 500,000 at least. I think the Larkin projects, what I've heard is that the non-affordable units are more like 800,000. And I don't think we're at the point where the affordable units have gone yet, have been put up yet, so.
Yeah, I think my recollection is on North Street, the Larkin, those units were in the mid-6s to maybe 7. And do we have any data on how many Medfield seniors went into a unit like that? And the other point is that this project doesn't meet a lot of the points that you brought up. They're not looking for 40B, right? This is a 40B. How much control do we really have? And is this really going to accomplish our 40B objectives?
So the way I look at that is, A, there are some seniors who do qualify for 40B, so there is some demand for senior targeted 40B housing. But if we have this other significant demand for senior housing in general, it's hard to get the senior housing that's the non-40B piece of it in a 40B project, because in order to subsidize the 40B senior housing, you're going to have to artificially inflate the price of the other senior housing.
That's funky. That's funky economics. So that's kind of funky economics, voodoo economics, they used to call that, right? Market-based housing is market-based housing. Nobody's going to go buy a 40B unit condo and pay $100,000 more if they could buy a comparable unit that's not 40B for $100,000 less. It's still going to be market rate. It's the builder that's taking it a little bit out of their pocket, and they get it back by putting more units into a piece of property. That's how they get it back. So the buyer isn't subsidizing it. The town is giving up control and how much property can go into a site. My biggest point is that you're only getting 4 units.
Lots.
Right.
So, yeah.
You're only getting 4 units out of this. It doesn't help the town with the next year's number of units that we need. We've already got 27 on the books starting in May of next year. This would just add 4. So it's not helping us achieve our 1-year goal, and it's not getting us to 2 years worth of housing units in 1 year. It's only adding 4 units to the gross total. Meanwhile, the people in this neighborhood have to have 16 units stuck on their street.
So
And it's not accomplishing the objectives that the senior housing.
Okay,
I would deny that, I would recommend that you not vote to support this, because I don't think it helps you with your 40B count right now. It is a total of 4 units to the gross that ultimately you need. Those should come, from my opinion, at the state hospital. What the town needs is another 15 units to get from, or 14 units to get from 27 to 42. And if we could figure out a way to get there, that would be great. But I don't think this really helps us next year. I don't think it meets the objectives of what the Senior Housing Committee would like to have done.
We got it.
Enough said.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so before we get into our discussion here, I just want to make one sort of preliminary set of comments. I've been closest to this of the 3 of us in my role on the Affordable Housing Trust Board, and I as a matter of practice, I don't vote as a member of the board, so I don't get to vote twice. And apart from the merits, which let Pete and Gus speak to first, I did want to say this whole process, and sometimes a lot of these developments, they're very contentious, and people's emotions get high, and they say all sorts of stuff, and you think it's Darth Vader marching into town to do something. And I want to say that this whole process has been heartening for me because of the way The neighbors here have conducted themselves throughout this whole process, and you can tell all of you have been here a long time and know each other, and so you treat each other with respect, which is not always the case. And it seems like nowadays when people disagree with each other, they just assume that people who disagree with them are just horrendous people who are wrong about everything. And I appreciate the fact that you've all been substantive and kind and respectful, and it's a good lesson for how to deal with contentious issues. And I know some neighbors are for it, some are against it, and and that's been heartening. And I will say and echo what Laurel said about Mr. Borelli, which is, in addition to the project at 67 North Street and 71, which are beautiful buildings, and that's the one that Mr. Murphy referred to. There's a picture of it up, I think, at the DHCD office. This is kind of a way to do it. I think every development in town he's done has been outstanding. And I would say, for me personally, I don't think I would have even entertained this proposal at the outset if he wasn't attached to it, because you know if he's doing it, you're going to get the best version of whatever this is going to be. And you're not going to have any ancillary extra problems that's happened with other developers. And so just as from a process standpoint and how everyone's conducted themselves, I just want to say it's just very heartening how that's gone. And I'll let Pete and Gus speak to the merits first, then I'll get my view on the merits after. But I wanted to say that up front. Whichever way this goes, you've all taught a very valuable lesson to everybody here in how this has gone. So thank you. Pete?
So this has been to the Affordable Housing Trust. Did they take a position on it? Did they take a vote on it?
The board is in favor of it.
And that vote was unanimous, was it?
Might have been 5 with 2 of, I abstained, there might have been one other person not there.
Okay.
I think it was 5, there's a memo. Sarah sent us the memo that they sent back in September.
So I guess the first thing that I would mention is that I don't see this as any sort of solution to the town's 40B projects. I sort of think of it the same way that Kevin's talking about it. In fact, we get 4 affordable units, but we're building 16, so that because we're of the 16, we need to have 1.6 more to cover that 16 new units, so that we're not really even getting 4 more units. We're getting like 2 more units of SHI units. But I think of it as a process to get to a variety of housing that doesn't necessarily exist in town. At a slightly smaller and lower price point than we have a lot of in town already. And so for me, that's the reason to think about going ahead and doing it, just to add to the variety of housing in town, especially if it's age restricted. That's a huge benefit in my mind. I guess I had just in addition to that sort of general thinking about it, I had a couple specific questions. The question about bringing out the access through the gravel pit, is that land that's controlled? Is that even a possibility?
It's pretty far away. Yeah.
Is that, I see West Street on this plan here. It looks like it's not too far away, but is that land that's controlled by you?
Gravel pit's on the other side, though, isn't it?
It's the other way.
It's the other way.
Oh, it's the other way?
Towards West Mill.
Oh,
The old farming plant, the old farming pubs. It's the gravel pit they referred to.
I don't even know, well, does
I don't think-
anybody
I don't
own the
think that's-
land out there? Is that
I
available?
don't think it's a possibility, Pete.
It doesn't strike me that it's,
If the railroad wasn't there, you might have that, you can go down the railroad, but that's it.
oh, yeah, all right, so that there's really no
Probably would not be
connection.
an
Yeah,
attractive.
there's no access to get down through there.
Yeah. And then the only other question that I had was about the rental, but it sounds to me like the neighbors don't want the rental, so that I won't pursue that at all. That's it for me.
So I'm not sure if this is a fair question to ask the residents of the neighborhood, but in that you came to a meeting a month and a half ago and raised a number of issues. When I read this updated proposal, what I was looking for was evidence of movement or accommodation or some degree of responsiveness. In listening to you talk tonight, and this may not be a fair question, but earlier we had talked about environmental issues around vernal pools. We had talked about, actually, I assume that because of some of the buffer plantings and things that I read in here, we might have been talking a little bit about noise or light or whatever in terms of proximity of units. And then tonight we've been talking about traffic. What is if this is a fair question, if it's not, then just don't answer it, but what is the real concern you have with this project? If you had to distill it down and say, what's at the top of the list, what are you most concerned about with this project?
The vernal pool.
It's the environmental, vernal pool, okay.
The vernal pool, the wetlands, the salamanders, the creepers, the trees, the congestion that it would create back there.
And the egress.
The egress, the safety.
Well, and I think it's also fair to say,
All
right, I
the
mean,
same
this
are the
is-
concerns that I had given you before,
Right.
from
This is
one
also,
all the
I
way
think,
down.
This is also, right now, effectively kind of part of your backyard, which is now woods down to the railroad, right? Which is a very pleasant thing to have in your backyard. And you'd rather have woods down the railroad in your backyard than houses.
Or
Right.
that overlay.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an okay thing to say, right? It's okay to say, you don't just have to, it's not just about the salamanders, you can say, look, all things being equal, I'd rather not have more houses in my backyard, that's okay, right?
Most people would agree with that.
Right, and that's, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's
I mean, so-
unfortunate that the overlay didn't go through, because it would have been nice to just have all of them go right down in a line, right where Shiloh's house is. And then you don't have to disturb anything back there.
So the reason I asked the question is I was trying to gauge what the potential or what the direction might be if there were to be a change to this plan. I'm just trying to get a sense. It's one thing to say, well, no, it's just we shouldn't do it because we like the land, versus, well, there's, what's the degree of accommodation from both sides if there were to be a change in the plan? Is there some way that the development could get to a point where it would address your biggest concerns and yet still make sense? That's what I was trying to gauge. I'm not,
It's just unfortunate it can't all be right
Yeah.
down in a line
yeah.
versus disturbing and down on the opposite end, and just a road that separated it, you know?
So let me weigh in on a couple things. One, to Mr. Stoddard's point about 4 units not making a difference. I would point out in 2020, there'll be a new housing inventory. The projection for the annual requirement for affordable housing after 2020 with the new inventory will be 25. The projection was 25 houses a year. So if we've got plans for 21 houses a year, I can tell you 4 housing units might in fact make a difference if suddenly in 2020 we find we need 25. So that's one of the issues we're worried about is 40B.
I mean, it's 22 or 23, not 25.
The projections before were 25.
Most likely the total will be around 4,500, of which 0.5% will be 22 and a half, so 22 or
Okay,
23.
okay.
around it.
Well,
But still, the point is. the
2
same.
years ago it was 25.
The point is the
That's
same,
where I was going.
yeah.
But my point is that the number goes up, so it could in fact make a difference. That's 40B. There's a second thing, which is senior housing, and what's kind of nice, to echo Mike's point about you are both speaking as neighbors who will have to live with a project if a project goes in, and you're a segment of this population that even if you don't have designs on wanting to live in any of these, you at least can identify with the people in town who are looking for this kind of housing. So in terms of how you would trade those things off is meaningful to me. My sense, right, so a part of me is, and I would also, we've never met, I don't know you, Mr. Borelli, but I can echo the comments that Mike has direct knowledge of. I've gained indirect knowledge of that if there's a developer here that's going to do a good job, you're the guy that would come to the top of my list, not because I know anything, but just because your name has kept popping up there. So if this is a project that's going to happen, we have grounds for optimism it will be done well. The only question is whether the project that is envisioned here has responded to what you're all calling out that you would like to see as much as it possibly can. Is this really it's either this or it's nothing? Is that the decision we're making?
Right now, yeah.
Or is there still room to figure out some way to get down there? So that's my question is, for tonight's vote for us, is this a this or nothing thing, or is this an endorsement of the concept of a lit project that we would go down for, recognizing that somewhere in this process, it has to still be worked out before the specific design is?
So I think it's essentially yes or no on this. I mean, the kinds of details that would be changed from here on out were relatively small. So the basic notion of 16 units for sale in this location, in broad strokes, that's what we would be endorsing. It may be that, for example, with the Dale Street project, in the ZBA process, they ended up moving the location of some of the houses from the original site plan, kind of closer to the DPW and that kind of stuff. But the basic unit count and the concept is more or less, once we approve it, that's kind of, it's got to stay that way. And the way we do it is we sign a contract with the developer that spells it out, that's what it's going to look like.
So I'll make a statement, and then, because you're closer to it, you can feel free. To the point that you opened up with, I'm not yet satisfied that this discussion has gone, recognizing you've tried, and not because I don't think that the idea of putting a project like this here is bad. From what I've heard tonight, I'm not satisfied that there's enough of that give and take that's gone on to where I truly feel like this is an all or nothing, fish or cut bait decision, or I don't feel comfortable having this be a fish or cut bait decision tonight, which is not to say I don't like the project, it's just I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'll invite you to tell me that the Affordable Housing Trust has been hammering and holding and has really worked at trying to hammer that out, and then I'll listen. But
I mean, so I will say to that point, I think a lot of work has been done over the course of time. I mean, the procedure that that we followed with this project, with all the others, there's neighborhood meetings. I think there might have been 2 different neighborhood meetings, 2 different Affordable Housing Trust Board meetings, additional discussions with Sarah. So this has evolved, it has changed, the layout has changed. Now, the reality is there's only so much you can do on this site, right? I mean, this is not 40 acres where you could sort of play with it however you want, right? There's, if you think of, I don't know if you've been there, but if you go to this location, it is analogous to, but smaller to what Turtle Brook is, essentially right along the railroad tracks, kind of tucked in behind other houses. And so I will say this is where kind of the skill of developers come in. Like, I would never in a million years, you walk down Adams Street and think, oh, you could build 16 houses behind the row of houses on Adams Street, right? I mean, that's where the creativity comes into it. So, I mean, I don't think there's a ton of room to move. And as was noted, the original proposal was for just a regular for sale. And I think the feedback was no, because we're not interested in that. But if you came back as an over 55, it might fit into that piece of the strategy because it was not a great affordable housing project, right? And so that's what they came back with. So I don't know that there's necessarily more work to be done that would satisfy the concerns of the people who are opposed to it on that front. So I don't know that can be. So I do think we are in a little bit of a position on saying yes or no to this at this point. And obviously then if the answer is yes, we'd proceed. If the answer is no, Mr. Borelli is welcome to come back with a different proposal at that point. But I think we are kind of yes or no on this. And so, I don't know if you have more to add.
No.
So I'll just give you my take on this and how I think about this project and how I think we ought to think about these LIP projects. Obviously, the focus under the housing production plan has been to build enough units to get us into safe harbor and be on an overall smooth trajectory towards getting to our 10%. And where we are right now, based on what we expect the census to be after 2020, we expect the census to be around 4,500 total units for the town, or 4,600 total units for the town, which will affect not only the safe harbor amount, which is 0.5% of that, but it also affects your 10%. And so the bogey we've been working towards is 10% of 4,500 or 10% of 4,600, with the idea that we want to get to 10% after the 2020 census date, be at 10% through 2030 at a minimum. And there are, as noted before, a number of projects on the table, and the focus has been on those projects that will move us towards that goal at a relatively measured pace and get there with the least kind of collateral negative impact on the town, right? And hopefully, perfect example being 67 North Street and 71 North Street that have added benefits for the town beyond the units, right? You took 2 buildings that were kind of falling apart, but were historic buildings in the business district, you've turned them into beautiful buildings, right? So there's sort of an additional upside. And so I think when we look at this kind of a project that does not, is not really crucial either to the safe harbor or the 10%, right? We're not going to hit the 10% so exactly that you're just going to be 4 short, right? We're probably going to get over it just a little bit, depending on what happens elsewhere. And so when we evaluate it, we ought to evaluate it in light not only of the potential benefit there, but what's the overall upside for the town, right? When you look at this, apart from the benefit for the 16 people who live there, or the 16 people who buy the houses, apart from the benefit to Mr. Borelli, sort of, what's the benefit to the town? And then how does it fit in kind of with the overall strategy that we have? Because the advantage of being in Safe Harbor, the work we've done into Safe Harbor, and we've had to approve projects that people didn't like, right? Not every project we've done has been met with hosannas, and I'm sure we'll have future projects that were met, and we're not here to decide just based on, purely an opinion poll of who's there. We've got to evaluate the merits. But when you are in Safe Harbor, and we've worked to get there, I think it puts us in a position to only approve projects we feel really good about, that really have an upside for the town, and that are going to provide a significant benefit. And when this originally came through, I intentionally scheduled this to come after the special town meeting, because I wanted to see sort of what happened with the overlay district, what happened with the Hinckley property. And what happened with the overlay district, it was voted down pretty substantially, such that I don't think we'll be bringing it back anytime soon. The Hinckley property was closer. And as I kind of looked at this project in conjunction with the Hinckley development that was on the table at town meeting, is you sort of had, between those two projects, let's say 45 senior units, and they kind of fit into all pieces, right? So you had the pure market rate units here, you had kind of the middle class, which is the middle units at the Hinckley project, right? Which was designed to kind of fit that middle range, and then you had the 4 affordables here, right? So you kind of covered your bases, and you could kind of see that very much as kind of a senior strategy with two developments. With the Hinckley development being taken out, we're not going to be able to do at Hinckley what we thought we were going to do. I think what will end up happening is we'll probably end up proposing something for the Hinckley property again this spring, but it's going to have to be a 40B project. And it's going to have to be something more like this. And if you're looking at that, are you going to do 2 of those in one general area? And which is the better site ultimately? And I think the Hinckley is the better site for this kind of a project than this. And so I'm reluctant to disagree with the other members of the board of the Affordable Housing Trust, but I don't see a sufficient upside to the town to do this now, in the sense that it's not going to get us an extra year of Safe Harbor. It's not going to move us strongly towards that 10%. It does put a bunch of houses in people's backyards, which under the zoning bylaws that we've adopted in the town say you can't do it, right? And so you start with the default of what have we adopted as the generally applicable zoning bylaws for the town. And more often than not, most of the time, people should follow the generally applicable laws that we adopt up front. And you shouldn't have to be in a position of sort of negotiating exemptions and the rest. And obviously, the position we're in on 40B, we have to work with it. But here, I don't think there is a compelling need to do this right now. And so, given all the concerns of disruption, and given the reality that one of the goals of the housing production plan is to develop projects in different places in town. And the reality is, the first ones we have done are kind of in the same area, right? Now, all things being equal, if that's the only place people want to build, you have to deal with it. But in this situation, I don't think we have to do another one, and I just don't see the upside to this. And I think, frankly, the rejection of the overlay district at town meeting tells me at least that the actual interest in actually building senior housing isn't as strong as the voices of the people who are most persistent about it, and that overall that may just not be an important value for the town, such that if you're looking at kind of overriding our zoning rules and overriding our local conservation bylaws, I just don't see the benefit to the town to do that. So I don't think we ought to go ahead with this at this point. I would be a no on this, and I'll have to go see my fellow Board of Trustees members next week, and they'll all can throw apples and tomatoes at me for disagreeing with them, but that's kind of what I think. Comments, Pete?
I guess I was sort of ambivalent about this. I thought it provided some housing units in an area age-restricted that we didn't already have, and on that basis I was willing to consider it. As I said, I don't think it assists us with our affordable housing plans and projects in town. So I guess I was sort of pretty ambivalent. I could have gone for it. I could have gone against it, but it doesn't sound like it matters what I do at this point, since the two of you are going to.
I don't think Gus has said what he thinks yet. So.
I haven't said yet. If it'll help
you can try to change our minds, Gus.
I mean, the one thing I would say before you comment is that this is the sort of project that does assist the town, because I was just adding up the taxes, and I'm guessing that it's 140,000 of taxes to the town every year, and there's not going to be any costs. It's very unlikely that there'll be any school children in those units probably, and that's the major town municipal costs on any housing, are the school children, so that's probably at least $125,000.
I'm only 13 years away from being 55, Pete, so watch out. I'll still have plenty of kids at home, man.
Rub it in.
Well, yeah. So that's just another benefit of the project, that it would add money to the town treasury at pretty limited cost, but.
So for different reasons than what Mike described, and he's probably got sounder long-term reasons than I did. My sense of this discussion is that we haven't had, I'm not satisfied there's been enough of whatever would have to be done to reconcile things to where I would have been comfortable voting for it tonight. And I actually picked up on your opening comment that said, well, maybe you're not going to vote on it tonight. Maybe we have to go out and keep working on it. And I think part of what drives me to say, yeah, why don't we do that? You've stepped forward to help the town put up affordable housing and done a really nice job in 2 different places. So although I know you're in business and you want to make money at the projects you do, I think you've chosen projects that would suggest to me you're listening to what the town says it would like to do, and you're trying to figure out ways to do those projects that will meet what the town wants that make sense for you. And I basically appreciate that that's the kind of people we have in town who want to build our housing for us, so.
And that's not true of every developer,
Right.
right? And I
Right.
think,
But you should know that even though I'm saying I'm against approving it tonight, that's weighing on my mind, that I wouldn't want you to walk out of here with any sense of a loss there. I find this group really interesting because, to Mike's point, one of the messages that I've taken away over the last year is that seniors are really looking for housing, and yet when we try to do housing, we're getting blocked. And so I'm struggling with how to do that. It's not that you're wrong for blocking us, it's just that it's getting harder to figure out what the right path is that works for everybody. And I would like to figure that out. I view our job, we have to be responsible, we have to represent the town, but all of the things being equal, I think what we're trying to do is give the townspeople the things that they want within the practical limits of what we can afford to do. So this is a matter of how do I read tea leaves when every time I think I've read the tea leaves, I get told I'm wrong, and that struggles. I would ask the neighbors to consider one thing about, not necessarily this specific project, but a project here. The issues around sidewalks, the issues around traffic. If this is senior housing, 16 units of senior housing or X number of senior housing units probably isn't going to have a whole bunch of muscle cars pulling out at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning for everybody going to work. So I think the traffic impact for a development of this size for this target demographic is going to be more benign than what it might be almost anywhere else. The second thing is, if something like this were a senior project, my guess is that, to Mike's point, like Sullivan's point about the town wanting to put sidewalks in, this is a development which is reasonably close to the center of town, which is something that's highly valued by seniors. And to the extent that there's a significant senior population that's interested in being able to walk to town or to places nearby, I would think that would put greater emphasis on the town's interest in putting up good sidewalks. So this can go both ways, and I'm not trying to get you to change your mind about this, but as you consider what it is you want, I would ask you to think about those kinds of things and how something that's appropriate might actually make sense. So the last point I'll make, and I really don't like getting involved in trying to second-guess designs for real estate, because I know zero about designing projects.
But-
the one thing that comes to mind for me here, and I just throw it out as a gratuitous comment. In the case of the Medfield Meadows, or the project that's going in there are 12 for sale units that are put up in this new village-style configuration. and I'm looking at this long area, and I'm looking at the issues around the setback from the environment, the wetlands and things like that, and that kind of it's a village it's workforce housing is what the state calls it, but this idea of a village that doesn't necessarily even have a road in between, like imagine six houses facing each other in a village concept with a sidewalk, something you can walk to and get out to the parking. I can picture how something like that for 12 units could fit on that piece of property with taking up less room, maybe in a configuration that would be attractive. So for some of the setback stuff, that might be, it's still getting 16 units, but for that setback, that might be a design that has potential. That's what's going in now at the Dale Street North Meadows. I don't know. It's a gratuitous comment, but the idea that there's nothing that can be done if it's not this, that's a decision you all would have to make, but maybe there are some options that would be less onerous to the abutters that would still give you a project comparable. At this point, I'm not comfortable that we've had that discussion to where I'm comfortable approving it, but that's not to read into this that I think it's a terrible project and you should go away and never come back.
No, it's not a terrible project.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a terrible project, and I agree with you on the traffic impacts. I think that we all tend to, I think, overrate the traffic where we live, because that's where we live and where we see most of the traffic. And it's not to say that the traffic isn't bad, but that the incremental effect of this kind of a development on traffic, I don't think that would be a significant issue. But I mean, I do think, look, putting 16 houses where it's now woods, that's a real thing. There's a reason we have these zoning rules, that we do value kind of open space in the town, and it's sort of not a natural, necessary place to put it. So I think that's where we are. So do we need to take a formal vote, Mark, or? I don't think so. There was no vote on our agenda. There's no motion, so I think, all right. But again, I appreciate the proposal, and it's a harder decision because you're involved, Mr. Borelli. The reality is, I mean, because you do everything the right way, your projects are great, and so, that, as I've thought about this a lot over the course of the last several months, that's sort of been the most difficult piece, because I do know this will be well done, and it'll look nice and all that, but I think ultimately, the upside isn't there.
Just further support for what it's worth. I think the Conservation Commission would have been very vocal in their expression of the need to protect those local resources on the site.
Thank you, Mark. All right, thank you, everyone. Eve, you're a little late, but I think you're on. So, update on the plastic bag reduction initiative.
Mr. Chairman, before she gets going on that, Boston is about to kick in bylaw, as you're probably aware. That's given some additional impetus. And I happened to hear tonight before I came here, the Retailers Association of Massachusetts might actually be lobbying the legislature because they would prefer to get state statute passed and to continue the way we're going with 80-some odd different bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
The state reps, when I went to the legislative breakfast that the Mass Municipal Association held a couple of months ago, said that they were getting pretty close to passing the state statute.
Ms. Potts, welcome. An update on the plastic bag reduction initiative.
Yes, I'm a member of this, and again, the co-chairmans asked me to represent our committee tonight. And few additional things that we have I wanted to add to this. This is 3 pages that you people have, hopefully, and I'm sure some of you may have some questions. I'm more than willing to answer them, or try to. First of all, in regard to the facts, just to repeat, I think it's very interesting how, worldwide, 1 trillion plastic bags are used every year. That's a high amount. Also, in the United States, 100 billion bags are used every year. And in Medfield, 4,200,000 plastic bags are used every year. As you know, China is not accepting plastic bags anymore. So this is a problem. This, again, this is really just an update on what we're doing. And all the merchants have been notified.
Oh, can I just ask the folks in the back, please, to keep it down or take your conversation downstairs? I'm having a little trouble hearing. Thank you.
All the merchants have been notified, and we're very pleased that we had a very positive result from people. We only had 2 merchants who were hesitant, as you can see, to endorse the initiative, but said they would be willing to comply if the rest of the people wanted to. So, and also just a little addition that wasn't on this, Andy Costello went around and talked this summer to all the merchants, and she said some of them wanted her to talk to the home office. And she said she was very impressed with the way Shaw's reacted. More than willing to help. What can we do to help? Very, very positive. And she said that was a nice feeling because Shaw's is our largest merchant here in town. So that was a big plus. Also, she's going to do another sweep in January of all the merchants, too. So this is just going forward. Medfield Day was very successful, as you have read here, and with a student and also Andy wearing all the plastic bags. She said it was very positive, and people really enjoyed seeing that. It was a wonderful idea. Also, we're very pleased that the students are very excited about participating, and we want to further this too, of having them getting their input and helping us. What we've done, as you can see, we've been to we had the movie Bagot, seen it, it's excellent, and we were thinking about maybe showing it again in the spring because it is very worthwhile and it goes into the detail, the film Bagot. 22 people, as you can see, attended it. Also, we have multiple town meetings showing that, so we're trying to not just get the input in Medfield, we're trying to get other towns to ask what they're doing, how far along are they. One thing I failed to say, right now, there are 87 towns in Medfield who have a ban on plastic bags. And the 87 towns, it just keeps going up because more and more towns are going into this. So this is, we're contacting towns of our caliber, our size, to get their input too of what they've done. Also, Memo, we have contacted Memo. It was just the leadership committee, so we've asked to talk to the whole Memo group at their regular meeting. And we haven't heard yet, but we have that on our agenda. And let me see, they've done a lot of work. Even I joined this committee, and I was very impressed how much they've really worked on this. And we've had our informational forums, which have been very successful, even though we had a relatively low attendance. But part of it was, I know I handed out notices about the forum during our town meeting, and most of the people said, we don't need this because we're definitely in favor of it. We don't need to go to the forum because we're definitely behind it. So that was a very good feeling because most of us, we had a stack left over because they said, no, we're not going because we're in favor of it. So that was another plus. And so showing what we're going to be doing in the future, Andy's going to be meeting with the town council this Thursday since we haven't had negative output on this, to draft the bylaws for the town meeting in the spring. So she's working on that. We're also going to be checking on the restaurants. We haven't done that for, when they have takeout to people. So to prevent the use of plastic bags. So we're working on that. Also, we're participating in the holiday stroll. As you can see, there's quite a bit of information on that. I'm not going to go into a long detail, but we really aim to have it a plastic-free stroll, and people are participating in this, and they've been very thorough going through this. Other than that, this is just a survey of that. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for doing all this work. I had, which were the two vendors, merchants that had issues with the?
I asked the same question because I wasn't here. I didn't join this summer. And Andy kind of wasn't comfortable in telling me that.
Oh, okay.
But she did say.
But Shaw's is on board, so that's good to
Very
hear.
much so.
Great.
And then she contacted, many of the other vendors, and they were very positive about it.
Yeah.
The only two merchants that weren't, said they were hesitant, but they'd be willing to do it. Also, another thing which I thought was a good idea, they will have, hopefully, if and when this goes through, they'll have a 6 months leeway to get rid of their plastic bags. So it won't be, this has to be immediately. So I felt that was a good thought to do that, so they wouldn't be left with all these plastic bags and didn't know what to do with them there.
Yep.
So do you have any more questions?
Yeah, you just partly, I went to the first of the information session, so there's just a couple points that I'll confirm.
Yes.
One, the plastic bag ban that we're talking about here has to do with kind of the bags when you're checking out, paper or plastic. My understanding is, for instance, when you go to the produce department and you want to put, the apples in your bag, those plastic bags are still there. So
Correct.
There's one piece of this, from my standpoint, is the true impact on the extent at which this ban exists is for the main kind of discretionary use of plastic bags. It's not to restrict the use of plastic bags for some of the reasons, in those circumstances where you really ought to have a plastic bag. Yeah, meat, poultry, things like that, so
Right.
it's
I
not.
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Most bylaws do typically exempt that, or for instance, dry cleaning, or
Right.
other types of more essential type issues.
Right. The other point, knowing what some other towns have done, when you go to the idea, well, you can have paper, there's actually a further step that says, well, we want you to bring your own reusable bag, so you can buy a bag from us for 5 cents. My understanding is Medfield is not trying to put any kind of punitive things
No.
in here. Most people seem to be on board with it. I asked one question at the first informational session, heard pretty much what you said, the stores are all on board, people all want to do it, and because philosophically, I don't want to see government use its coercive powers any more than it needs to, even for something like plastic bags that help the environment. So then why do we need a bylaw? And the answer that I got to that question was, well, there are some towns that have done that. They basically just said, everybody's on board, we're just going to do
Right.
it this way. And then what happens is they've experienced some slight slippage from some stores. And so it sounds like we have a very, very broad-based level of support, both at the store side, the business side and the individual side, which is not to say it's 100%. I've heard from some people, but it's such a large, overwhelming group that seems to be on board with this, that this is probably not the 51% majority jamming something down the 49% minority's throat on this.
Well, I asked that question when I joined, and I wasn't on board in the summer. So I asked Andy this, and I said, why don't you just ban it, everything? And she said what you said. She said, we don't want to come out and just shove it down their throats and say, you have to do this. She said, we've got to go through the process. And I thought, she has a very good point, instead of demanding this to go. Someone made a comment that in Wegmans, they have a sign where you get your carts in the parking lot. Remember your bags, to bring your own bags, because so frequent, myself included, and I know Laurel's the same way, we get into the store And, oh, my bag that I've kept is in the car. I don't want to go back. So I thought that was a very good suggestion, to have a nice sign when you get your car in the parking lot, rather than having to get in this. Who's going to go back and get it? Most of us are too lazy on that. But I thought, we've received a lot of good suggestions, which is great. There.
Thank you. And so you'll be meeting with town council to work out the language and the
Andy
mechanics
is
and all that.
Costello this Thursday.
They've got some samples, apparently.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in, and sorry we got a late start for you.
That's all right.
So, all right, let's see. I think the last item that we need Mo for is the Pleasant Court water issue. So why don't we do that, and then we can get you home. You'll probably be back here early tomorrow morning, so. So just for the viewers at home and those who are here, I think each of us received a letter from a resident on Pleasant Court describing an issue with discoloration in the water, and she represented that affected not only her house, but also her neighbors as well. And so I think some of us, maybe all of us, passed this on to Mo, and so I thought we could chat about this a little bit. I think you probably don't have a complete answer tonight, but we should agree kind of who's going to communicate going forward, so not all three of us are not sending emails and the rest of it, and kind of sort out what we're doing. But with that preface,
Well, I think we have a lot of those kind of issues in town, some a little more, little worse than others, but I think this is something that the discussion with the Water and Sewer Board to kind of discuss priorities in town has to take place and see where this lands. It does happen to be on our 20-year capital plan. It's in fiscal year 2023, which is calendar year 2022. It is listed here on there. Whether to bring it up further, like I said, there'd be a discussion with the Water and Sewer Board. We had a lot of kind of bad information of what kind of system is out there. We know that when we do hydrant flushing, the hydrant is only a partial way up the street. There's a dead-end main, but we found that there's a 3-inch main and a 6-inch main. The 6-inch main gets flushed and everything's okay. The 3-inch main does not get flushed through the system. We weren't sure how it was installed until Ms. Sigliano's email, and we did some research and we found a plan from 1931, and actually this morning, and found that the 3-inch main comes off the last hydrant. So there's nothing on the other end to flush that hydrant out, and that's what causes that. It's a cast iron pipe. It rusts. That water gets flushed through the system, especially if you're using the bathtub. You're getting a higher flow, so that gets stirred up more for those pipes to get more of the discolored water. If you run it a little longer, it may clear up, but
sounds like maybe not sometimes too.
Sometimes not. Yeah. So it is on our capital plan, but as I said, if to push it further up, we should have discussion with the Water and Sewer Board.
You know when's the next meeting?
It's going to be before Christmas, so it's in December.
With a heavy agenda.
Yeah. Are there other potential solutions other than just replacing the main that would kind of solve the issue in the short term, and then?
We contemplated putting in a flush valve at the end of the pipe. We don't know where this pipe is, but because of this plan, we have a better idea of where we could find it. It's going to take some investigation, some test holes to try to find it. Being a 3-inch main, we may not be able to, maybe too small of a diameter to flush from the other side. So right now, it's difficult to come up with a solution. That's why it's on the capital plan. It's the first water main project that we have on the capital plan. But with the priorities that we have right now with the treatment facility, the Mount Nebo tank, the direct network, those are the only things that are in front of this project. So it's kind of to see where we need to be. I know it's hard because it's only a handful of people, but it's an important project as well. But
people should not have brown water.
Correct.
It's a general principle of our water department, should be
Right.
no brown water, I think.
Exactly. And we, you know, we do want to take care of that. I think that we could look into a solution next year, if the Water and Sewer Board agrees, that we could do a temporary water service and replace that 3-inch main and not replace the whole system. That's what the capital plan shows, is replacing the whole system. We could look at that and try to get a contractor to do a replacement just for that 3-inch main and the people that are attached to that. We're not sure who's really attached to that 3-inch main, so that's another investigating to do. But that could be a short-term resolution next year, but it's still gonna be could be $25,000
Right.
project as well.
So can you be in touch with Ms. Sigliano, just laying out everything you just told us, just in case? I did alert her to the fact this would be on the agenda, and if she wanted to watch, I said it'd probably be after 8:30. If she stuck it out through the rest of it, hopefully if she's watching, hello. If not, if you could just send her an email, let her know what we're
Absolutely.
doing and how that goes. And as to the three of us, does someone want to be responsible for further communications? I'm happy. I'm happy to do it, but if it doesn't matter to me.
What, you want to communicate back to the
I,
homeowner?
instead of having her write each of the selectmen, having each of us write to Mo and having
Oh,
each
yeah,
of us
no,
get back.
no,
to
that
her,
makes no sense. I
if
think.
one of us would just get
Well, I
back
thought
to
that
her.
Mo would take it from here.
Yeah, but in terms of somebody here on this, so you're happy to do it, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
I guess you'd be happy to
I'm
do
sure
it.
I'll be happy to do it, so. Why don't I do it? I'll do it. So I'll, if you just copy me on the email
You
to
got it.
her, and I'll, just let her know that if she has a question for someone other than you, she can ask me and not have to email everybody.
Sure.
Now that Mike has taken responsibility on behalf of the Board of Selectmen for making sure this happens, I would say that
I'll be out there mucking out the pipe tomorrow morning, Gus.
you're gonna have a meeting this month and figure out whether you can accelerate anything for a permanent fix. I would agree with Mike that telling someone that we're got it on the schedule for 23, so we have 5 more years of brown water for you. We gotta not have that happen, so there has to be some way around that. It may be temporary. I was sitting there toying around with, well, gee, what if I don't know how many houses are on it either. It sounds like it's more than one. 'Cause
There's
the neighbors-
there's
the
maybe
neighbors-
3, we
Yeah.
feel there's 3 houses
I'm
connected to
sitting there
that.
wondering whether you could simulate a hydrant flushing by getting all of the neighbors turned all of their faucets on for like an hour, all at once, and get enough flow going.
The
through
big put in a big backyard hockey
It's-
rink to
yeah,
start the.
yeah, It's not an issue of putting a lot of money into it, but it sounds like something that has to get fixed. When I asked, communicate with them, she did tell me that they do have a filter for the drinking water. They have some sizable filter that washes it, but but that's not a full-time solution, and that's not for all the water they have, so they're at least not drinking groundwater right now.
Probably a good thing. Good decision. Yeah.
Keeps you regular.
Anything else? Anything else, Mo, that we need to talk to you about? Otherwise,
It's very binding.
It's always something to talk about.
otherwise, thank you, and you can head out.
No.
Just as to the many other items on our agenda, is anyone here for something in particular? If someone's here for something in particular, we can start with that. Otherwise, we're going to just kind of go through everything here. No?
Oh,
Okay.
that's Cindy. That's next.
Oh, the streetlights. You want to do the streetlights? You can do the, I have to recuse myself, so let's do this. Let's go to
Some people
the.
just come for the entertainment value.
Well, it is very high. All right, so we'll do the Verizon and Eversource agreements pertaining to streetlight pole attachment. I'll recuse myself.
These are actually pretty nice layouts of these units. But this is a fireplace. It looks crazy. And this is a
Seemed pretty
door from the
straightforward.
living
I think it's solved.
window.
Yeah, I think we,
So I think that hopefully town council can confirm that the issue is solved with Verizon. It sounded like Verizon was congratulating, or somebody was congratulating us on solving it for the whole state.
so Mark, the streetlights, as far as we could tell from what we got, the streetlight contract is, the issue around the fees is solved. They've taken that completely off the table.
Yes,
And
it's been,
apparently-
the lead utility here is Eversource, and that's who we were really dealing with. Then we pinned down the issue of the fact that Verizon still had some interest. And then subsequently, as a result, first of all, I was successful in getting, Eversource's general counsel and their contact person to clarify that there would be no charge for the rentals of existing. And actually insert language that made it clear, and they gave us all the referenced schedule that before had not been provided to us, so that we knew exactly what it was. Subsequently, we received, kind of unannounced, a delivery to Town Hall here, which was a parallel contract from Verizon. And that has clear language in it also that says that there's no charge for, no rental charge for existing attachments.
So we actually we are signing two contracts
Right.
then? Okay.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, they're same terms and conditions?
Yeah, there's all kinds of other charges and expenses and stuff, and I think the committee is aware of it. But the major concern I had all along was that we were going to end up getting hit with a regular monthly rental fee on these things. If not now, sometime in the future. So that's been addressed to my satisfaction.
So there's nothing else we should be worried about before we accept this contract, yes? We're good?
So I thought that I had made at least some members other than you of the committee aware that this was going to be on the agenda tonight, so.
Yes, yeah, and he said you'd be representing him, so.
Okay.
So, Lee, I just texted Lee, and he said he was told he didn't need to be here, so.
Yeah, he said he could make it tonight, but that you'd be here and some of the other members might come by also, so, if there were any questions to be answered, so.
I don't think there are any questions. We're glad to, have this contract issue resolved.
So actually, there are two documents in the case of Eversource, the original, which is a purchase and sale agreement and a license agreement. The purchase and sale transfers title. The license agreement is to continue going forward. In the case of Verizon, it's just one agreement.
So there's three documents that we'll,
Right.
okay.
Two for Eversource, one for Verizon.
And all we need is
A motion to.
a motion, okay?
to-
Any further questions?
Mr. Temporary Chairman, I would move to vote to sign the Verizon contract and the two Eversource agreements pertaining to the streetlight pole attachments.
I second that. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Okay.
Could I ask one question for you?
You've approved it then?
There was some condition on the grant that something be done by December 31st. Will this be sufficient? We don't have to have the lights installed by December 31st? No, we don't have to. As long as we have a signed contract and an award of a contract too? We're still covered, okay.
Is that your understanding, Mark?
I have no understanding. I wasn't involved in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I knew there was some urgency to getting this done.
Right, I mean. Part of the problem is there are many other towns who are doing this, so we
Right.
wanted to make sure we got in while there were still available grant
They're
funds to
actually
do this.
installing the LEDs in Franklin right now, the same company that Medfield is part of the consortium that bid through MAPC. So,
And we have surveyed the locations and there are no major changes in terms of location of lights, so it's just a
Right, we
matter of
surveyed all
replacing
the
the
lights.
lights where they are right now.
Right.
And it looks like we only need one Board of Selectmen signature. Oops, it's for firefighters. Why do I only see two signatures if there's three contracts? So right now, I only see.
Let's get
see what's on the
Sorrell,
bottom.
let me get Sorrell back out here for you because he put those together.
I only see two documents. Only got two. Pete, I guess I'll go ahead and sign those, unless you want to. You want to sign them, or you want me to sign?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
I'm happy to sign if you
Mark,
don't want to.
I have two. I have a Verizon. And
We voted to sue Verizon.
I have two Verizons, but no.
You don't have the
Eversource.
Eversource ones?
I don't believe so.
No, they were emailed to, they were emailed. They would have had been printed out. They were, Mike got them, I got them, Lee got them. So I think you're just gonna have to.
We voted to sign the whole thing now.
Right.
You can go by and
Okay,
sign
well, I
it.
have two here, so I can do those.
Can we vote to have the town administrator sign them then?
Is that
So we
allowed?
don't have to come back in?
I'm not sure whether offhand what's there for a signature line. It's just gonna
Back in.
complicate things probably. Because they have to go back to corporate headquarters. It's just better off to.
Better to just, yeah, do it the way they want it done.
Okay. Back over to you,
I mean,
Mike.
by default, Chris, if you can't find them like tomorrow, let me know and I'll go dig them out of my
It's
record.
the only one I think I'm signing, I have two Verizons here, so I
Right,
assume
the
these are okay. So
Eversource,
it's just,
right.
it's one document that you're looking for.
The Eversource documents were revised and the latest revisions were emailed to everybody.
Okay. Okay. You can keep going if you want, Mike.
All right, so I thought we'd do the municipal comment letter next regarding the Rose Bay at Medfield. This is Courtney Starling from Community Opportunities Group and Sarah put together this draft comment letter that assembles the comments from different departments and suggested comments from us, which I've reviewed. We also got, I hope you both got the comments from Todd Trebenko from the Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees, principally on the last paragraph relating to the pro forma and the low-income housing tax credits and the rest of that. And I agreed with his comments.
I thought his comments were very helpful.
Yeah, that's what Todd does. I mean, Todd is in
Yeah,
this
it's
area.
clear that he's very expert.
Yeah, I think I understand the points that Courtney made in the letter she drafted about that, but it's going to be true of any project that's supported by housing tax credits. And
Yeah,
you're always
yeah.
at the mercy of whatever the government policy is and when the investor gets out in 10 or 15 years down the road. So I think I would be inclined to accept Todd's comments. Does either of you have any other comments? Is anyone here to comment on the letter or comment on the Rose Bay issue at all? No? You would like to? All right. You'll need a microphone.
Well, if you're going to press it to get it on. You're under stress. Very stressed.
Cynthia Green, 44 Pleasant Street. I'm in the neighborhood. I did send in a comment, and I just would like to know what comments are being given by the Board of Selectmen. There's been a lot of concern in the neighborhood of the size and scope of the project. I can speak for myself. I'm not against the project going forward. It's the size, it's the 3 stories that really is a problem. It doesn't fit with the neighborhood.
So I won't read the whole letter, but I think the thrust of the comments from the board and the main comments from the board in the draft letter, and I agree with the comments that are in here, aren't exactly that point. What the developer, and this project has been in gestation for a while, and The developer has repeatedly said that his preference is to deal with the design and size and scope issues in the comprehensive permit process. And the feedback that he's gotten from the town planner and from others in town is that we'd rather deal with the design before we get into the comprehensive permit process. And what the letter says is that if we don't successfully address the design issues, that we would consider recommending that the project not be approved if the design is not changed to be more consistent with the neighborhood and more appropriate. So we have to, the way it works, given that we're in the safe harbor under 40B, we have to kind of give notice in the comment period that we might invoke that right as part of the process. And so the letter says essentially that if we aren't able to come to an agreement on the design, we'd be willing to invoke it, which I think would be a shame overall if we can't work it out. This overall is a pretty good project, and I think it can be made to be a project that works pretty well, is relatively low impact on town services. It's something that's been in the housing production plan from the first day. But I had the same reaction to the building, and I think he's gotten the same feedback to the building for a long time, and his view has been, well, we'll work it out in the comprehensive permit process. I don't think that's the most efficient way to do it. I don't think that's the best way to do it. So that's kind of the summary of it. It notes the views of different departments who have different questions and concerns of varying degrees of seriousness, I guess, would describe. Some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. So I would say the main comment is that we have significant concerns with the design, but the building, the size of the building, and we'd like to see that addressed before we enter into the ZBA process. So I think that's kind of to summarize a long letter, that's kind of the takeaway, and hopefully the takeaway that the state and Mr. McMillan will get from it. So, Gus or Pete, did you have comments or edits?
No,
I thought the letter set the right tone, and speaking personally, I think I've heard enough comments, plus I think I understand where they're coming from, and they all seem reasonable to me, so I would think we'd get to a resolution that makes more sense.
I think so. I think it's a design issue, and there's more work to be done. And he's a very capable person, the developer, and so hopefully we're going to get to some sort of a resolution and have something that's better overall. But we'll see. So why don't we get a motion to sign this letter? I assume you agree with Todd's comments as well?
Yes, yeah. Yep.
With Todd.
Yes,
So with the edits that were provided by Todd on the last paragraph about the pro forma and the low-income housing tax credits and the rest of it, I don't think he had a comment on any other paragraphs.
He provided
Yeah.
You've got the comment.
It was the last.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
do we have a motion there?
I move that the Board of Selectmen sign the letter dated.
think just me,
November.
authorize.
Oh, just you, authorize the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen to sign the letter dated November 27th, 2018, to Catherine Racer, Associate Director of Division of Housing and Development, expressing the town's position on the Rose Bay project as revised by Todd Tarabenko's comments.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So Christine, will you let Sarah know?
Really, right now.
Okay, great. And so if you want me to, I'm in town tomorrow, so I can come by and sign.
Okay.
We're gonna put it on fancy stationery and all that. I can come by and sign that. All right, okay. That is done. Townwide master plan charter, I apologize to all of you for sending you my notes from last year's town meeting in lieu of the draft charter for the master planning committee, but hopefully you got it when I sent it last night.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let me know if you have comments on the charter that I sent around last night. Evelyn, did you print a copy of that one that I sent out last night? Yes. Revised one? Is it under discussion items? There we go.
I was fine with the draft the way it's presented now.
And I captured your comment from last time appropriately. I think the only thing I did, but just made it a separate section
Yep.
rather than
I saw that, yep.
yeah.
True to form, I have more significant comments. Let me start generally. First off, this document, I think, needs to be more focused on what the required output of the master planning process is and less focused on telling the committee on how exactly they need to do their job. So that's the broad direction that I'm coming from. The issue I have is we had money money was set aside to support the master planning effort. This describes a process where, in fact, at one point, it's not even the master plan committee, it's referred to as the steering committee, which reinforces a concern that somebody at one of these meetings voiced, I think, last spring when we were talking about funding this, that this process not be handed over to a consultant to do, but in fact, it would be fine for us to have a consultant to help the committee get the master planning done. But the way this thing reads, it sounds like this is a committee that's going to hire a consultant to go do the master plan, and then presumably is going to like it or not like it. And that's at least the tone that I picked up in this that I had problems with. I was questioning on step A, why are we directing the committee to do this? What if they want to use the funds differently in terms of consultant support? I would just say, we need you to develop a master plan. Here's funds that are available for you to hire the support that you think you need, and let them go for that. So that's in the broad direction of this.
Well, I mean, the only reason not to do that is that town meeting voted to appropriate money to hire a consultant to do a master plan. And so to say, we can hire a consultant to help us do a master plan. Right.
There's money that's set aside before
right,
we
look,
went into
yeah, but I don't want to get into a semantical argument about this. If you want to say that the committee is going to develop the plan with the assistance of the consultant, we can edit that.
Okay.
The thrust of this is not, I don't want to have an argument about that, which is purely a wordsmithing issue.
Okay.
But I don't think we should just say to them, go develop a master plan however you feel like doing it, right? I mean, there's
Why
money
not?
set aside because we'd like to do this on something resembling, that's what we did with the hospital. With the hospital, we said, go develop a plan for the hospital, and they just, it took them 4 years. They worked very hard at it, and.
So my issue.
What?
My issue is that we've gone to great lengths to tell them exactly how they have to go and develop a master plan, but I have a number of items that I think should go into what we want the questions we want the master plan to answer.
Then add it.
That need to be added. The questions we want answered, I think, are the more important input from the selectmen into what the answers.
Yeah, that's fine.
What questions
Then we
the
should add
master plan
them.
needs to answer, but not to sit there and tell the master plan committee when you will have an RFP issued, when you will do this. It's like, you need to have the master plan back to us by this, you have this kind of money to provide consulting support. Let us know what what kind of consulting support you want to answer the questions that we're asking you to answer. So but what I'm really saying is, we put more detail into the process that we want the committee to follow than we did, in my mind, into what the actual questions were we wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, we added, we had some questions in there, and if we have other questions to add, we should add them.
Okay.
I mean, that's easy. But there is a statutory requirement for what's got to be in a master plan.
Yeah.
And so at a minimum, they have to deliver what's in the
sure,
statutory
sure.
requirement.
Yeah, no argument there.
And I do think that we have to have some guideposts for when things are supposed to be accomplished by. And so if you think we should have fewer guideposts or a different schedule or what have you, that's fine. But I think if you, the problem is if it's left to, not to say left to your own devices, but if it's sort of left kind of open, the process will drift. And so
Well,
I think we do have to
think it would be
provide, I think
fine.
providing more substantive guidance is helpful, and it would have been more helpful if we'd provided more substantive guidance to the hospital master planning committee too. And that's fine, but I think we do have to have a schedule. And again, the schedule can be modified, but I think we have to have a schedule.
So if you go to attachment A, I had comments on attachment A. That was where I reacted to task 1, said appoint the steering committee. That's the master planning committee we're talking about there, right? Not just the steering.
Yeah,
committee.
master planning committee, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know why we were telling them how frequently they needed to meet. I think that just should go away. I think the draft RFP to be approved by the committee of January 17th, I just had a big question mark about that. First off, that's again specifying how they're going to use that money, and I don't think we should do that. If we want to do something like that, we should basically ask them to come in with a plan, their work plan.
Right. Well, we already did that, though, right? We already had a committee that looked at how we were going to do this. That committee met, they made a recommendation how we're going to do this, this is how they recommended to do it.
I guess that was probably.
And that was the Mike Quinlan.
No, I don't know that I've ever seen that.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, the whole point was, that committee was appointed to figure out, should we develop a master plan and how should we do it? And what they came back with as a recommendation is, you should form an overall committee they should retain a consultant, because the other way to do it is to do it through a combination of existing town employees and volunteers and the rest of it. And so that was the recommendation that they made, and that was eventually submitted to town meeting.
So my concern around that is not the fact that they have money to get support, is to make sure that that support is not viewed as the body that actually develops the plan, and they're merely overseeing the plan that a consultant develops on our behalf. We have some serious questions that we should be trying to answer. If this is a committee that will drift, we need to take a harder look at who's on the committee, because this is way too important a committee to simply put into a contract and say, give us a document that complies with state guidelines.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy to put any additional substantive things that are in there, but this is not supposed to be a 3-year process, right? This is not supposed to be.
I'm okay with the deadlines. Like
Yeah.
if we want to start at the back, 12, 11, and 10, I was okay with all of those dates, which says that the plan substantially completed by the end of January, and then all the rest is what it takes to get it ready for the town meeting. It was more, everything in between there had a lot to do with contracting for consultant, not the actual work that they're doing, what's their process, and I would leave it to them to tell us what the process is that they want to use. Now, if the master planning committee that we already had has said, here's the approach we think you should take in all this, I don't think I've seen that.
Okay.
Either that or my memory is shot.
To a certain extent, the substance of how they're gonna go about drafting the master plan is left to them. Right, what we're saying to them is you have to meet these targets up front, right? You gotta get started.
So I get rid of some of the contracting stuff I wouldn't be so detailed in.
That's fine.
But I could see us adding some things around, coming back to us with what your plan of work is. How are you actually going to?
I thought we had that in here. I thought we had a process plan request.
I don't see it in attachment A.
Develop a detailed process plan. It's not an attachment. We didn't give them a date for it.
Okay.
So they have to develop a process plan for the completion of the master plan.
That's, to me, what should be in attachment A. That's
You want to put a
somewhere.
deadline for the process plan. So
Yeah.
you want to cut out
So, yeah.
basically everything before 10? Like which dates are you okay?
What I would do, so I would get rid of the meeting frequency in 1. I'd leave 1 the way it is, where we're targeting, I'm not sure that December 11th, given today's discussion, is going to quite get us there, but nonetheless, that's the first thing.
Well, hopefully we
for sure.
can, though. Peter, you okay
Appoint the
with that?
committee.
Change? Okay.
Do we know who's even on this?
Well,
Do we
that's
know?
the other thing we're hoping to do tonight, is we do have some people, we do not have 15 people yet.
Okay.
We do have some people from other committees who've been recommended, we have some other at-large appointees. So we do have people we could appoint tonight, if we can, and then we'd have to fill the remaining slots, but they can at least get started.
So these would be people that have been designated out of the specified slots?
Correct, and then we
Okay.
had at least a couple of people, Jay Duncan and Jerry Potts, who expressed interest as well.
And I forwarded a resume for.
Yeah. So, and others.
Okay.
So, pending approval of the charter. So I'm fine.
So
yeah.
the issue here is I would not be so detailed around our
That's right.
contract. I would probably replace that with a detailed plan. If we wanted to have a deadline, if we wanted a milestone that we said we'd like you to come back to us with what your consultant support plan, what your consultant support plan is. What kind of support are you looking for, and when are you gonna have the contracts in place? That's fine. I'm just trying not to put them on a railroad track that there's this master planning.
I mean, I think though that
But you see,
the
why-
feedback that we got from the committee was, that this is assistance in developing a townwide master plan is kind of a service that is provided, right? That is a thing that you look for, and people bid on providing that kind of service, right?
So this would be kind of a Courtney Starling kind of a relationship.
Or a Kathy McCabe would probably be the more intense than Courtney Starling, because we're talking about 1 year of work. So it would be more of a Kathy McCabe kind of role.
Right.
Not necessarily
Okay.
particular, but kind of, essentially, the work of deciding what goes into the plan would be the work of the committee, drawing up the maps, and taking the first draft of what it has to say. Some of that will come from the consultant.
That part makes sense to me, as long as the committee doesn't give up the process of master. There's an issue of production of a master plan, and I get that part, so drawing maps and stuff like that, if that's the kind of technical support we're talking about with the
Yeah.
consultant, that's great. as long as that's not the consultant that says, look, just give me the reins, I'll come back to you in 6 months with a draft master plan.
No,
There's a
because-
whole bunch of other stuff.
Because there's a whole set of things they have to do. So as part of the master plans, there's a certain number of public meetings you have to have. And the consultant helps with that as well in terms of facilitating the public meetings and kind of doing the, kind of a lot of the same stuff that Kathy did in terms of promotion and outreach and kind of shepherding it along so that you don't have people on the committee have to sit down and write a 200-page document.
So my interest is less on the process and more on the substance.
Yeah.
So let me pass these out to you guys. So what, I did this, I reviewed.
Marked up my notes.
Well,
from town
because
meeting.
that's what I thought you were talking about. That's what I spent time working on. So you'll see, you'll see the.
I'd like to revise and extend my remarks from the 2018.
If you give me something, I'm gonna chew on it. It's like, there's, Mark, I think, if you.
Oh, don't feel you have
No,
to.
actually, you can have that one too, because I have another copy. So the stuff in red, I sat back and said, what are the real strategic issues that I mean, I actually think this is a useful exercise for the three of us to have. What do we actually think the real strategic issues are for the town? This master plan is not merely mechanics around how we're gonna get to affordable housing, how we're gonna get to senior housing. There's actually real issues here. On the draft, I mean, to me, there's questions around how big a town do we actually want? We're kind of going down paths of producing housing. Part of it's being driven by 40B, part of it's being driven, maybe, I think, by the demand for senior housing. Part of it's being driven by the fact that we've got a whole bunch of buildings up at the state hospital that we've got to try to figure out something to do with. And all of that, as we think about it, we ought to be thinking about it in terms of exactly how big do we want to allow or have this town grow. That, to me, is a strategic question that we could easily get into the mechanics of these individual initiatives, and it's just a question of whatever we could figure out in whatever amount of time we could figure it out. That's the kind of thinking that I think should be an input to the master plan. This was me trying to take a crack at what those things were off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at through this, all of these are fine for me. I mean, a lot of these are covered already in kind of what's required in the master plan
Yeah.
as applied from the state. So that question of how big the town's gonna be,
Yeah.
I mean, all those kind of questions are, what's the land use mix, what's the open space, and kind of all of those are kind of core questions for,
Okay.
the one question that's not in there, and that's not in the statute, is sort of the financial part of the master plan, right? Sort of the town, I mean, it's in there sort of, but not really. And so, yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay.
kind of, but yeah, I mean, all of these seem fine to me. I mean, I think as to specific questions, the sidewalks and the rest of it, I think adding those things, I suspected that we would add more stuff into this kind of specific issues to address category, which are beyond, at a level of, these are at a level of specificity greater than called for by the state statute. In other words, the state statute doesn't say, talk about the Parks and Recreation building, but you do have to have a municipal buildings plan as part of it. Now, you know, we don't have a
So
ton
the
of
thing
this.
I'm probably being sensitive to, partly because I haven't gone through the state guidelines, so that's an omission on my part. We probably should reference that. If that's kind of the driver for what this thing, maybe we put the reference into this charter document. The point that I'm making is, I want to make sure that this doesn't become an administrative drill, because we have to have an updated plan to comply with the state requirement and let the process start to drive the action. I'd rather see us have thinking drive the action, and then figure out how to incorporate, how to develop that in a way that allows us to comply with whatever administrative requirements the state might have for what a master plan needs to look like.
Right.
And that's my reactions here were really trying to make sure that we didn't just lapse into, let's nail it in.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think we should just add, however you want to accumulate these issues specifically.
I can, if you want now, I can take your, now that I have the
Actual
right
draft?
I can actually take a crack at, I certainly can incorporate these things, and I can take a crack at moving this the next step forward, and then cycling that back. So we
Yeah,
can-
and I think it's the kind of thing where, as to the schedule, it says the schedule, they should try to adhere to the schedule in attachment A. If they want to deliver it later, they have to let us know
Yeah.
by a certain date. I think.
Yeah, that was
we
all
can
fine.
Cut back on the attachment A. This schedule was originally the schedule that Sarah had suggested.
Okay.
So the signposts or the deadlines she put in, and so I would want to at least check with her
Yep.
if she had other reasons for why to have those particular dates in
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And so, but I don't think we should give the committee the discretion to decide they're gonna draft the plan on their own without listening to the consultant. We kind of made the judgment that was the way we were gonna.
So that's something I honestly don't think I've ever seen, is the recommendations from the prior master plan.
So I think that presentation was before you were on the board.
Yeah.
Because we basically put it on ice for a year.
Right.
So we got the presentation
Can
in.
somebody get me that, so I know what they said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was, I want to say it was 2017. Right, before March of 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was, with the idea originally it was going to be on the 2017 annual town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Because we had so much
Yeah,
that
yeah,
year
yeah,
we
yeah.
decided not to. Ended up in a year with everything else, so. So yeah, there's, Mike did a presentation at whenever the date of the meeting was. And so if we can
Okay.
get the date of that, Christine, you can look at his presentation.
okay.
And he kind of went through the three different options for doing it. It was kind of like, one would take 1 year, and one would take 3 years, and one would take 5 years. So we kind of picked the 1-year option, which was this. But obviously it could be extended. So I think to the extent, and Pete, if you have other stuff to add as well in the specific issues to address section.
I think I have that from Mike McQuillan.
Mike Quillen.
I think I have it here somewhere.
Wow. With you. All right.
See, that's why I carry all this crap.
Yeah. So do we want to appoint?
Year and a half, he's been waiting for me to ask for something. He hasn't.
Yeah, I wanted you to ask for something.
I was pushing for them to get it done because I wanted to get the house.
And we will, Bill. We will incorporate the
So, Gus,
hospital.
I have it here on my thumb drive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, probably.
All right, yeah, so I
Okay.
think if you want to add that stuff, I think we should try to appoint the people that we have, so that at least they can maybe get together with Sarah and get an organizational meeting together. We can appoint some more people, at the next meeting and kind of just get the ball rolling. And I think if we don't get the ball rolling now or at the next meeting, there'll be kind of nothing will happen until at least the middle of January.
Right. Well, I'm not sure a whole lot will happen between.
No, it increases the odds of something happening. Do we have the list, Evelyn? Of the people, do we have it in here? Well, how about we do this? Why don't we put it off to the 11th, and we can put the list of names in the packet? So we have all the people in the packet on the agenda, and we can do sort of a vote to appoint type thing for the December 11th agenda, rather than doing it now. Then we can get your input, and you can include whatever changes you make to the charter in our packet for the 11th. And if you have anything to add, we'll get all that to Evelyn, we'll get that in the packet. We'll get the correct document in the packet this time, and we'll do that on December 11th. I'll give you a copy of this. That's what, all right. Oh, pretty good, huh? All right. Continued discussion regarding council on aging and parks and recreation. I sent this one correctly.
Here it is.
That was it?
You have a PowerPoint too, Mark. Where's the PowerPoint?
I don't know, I don't have that, I just have his handout. Maybe, I don't think that's dated either.
I'm gonna bet it's January of 2017. January 2017, because we're sort of right, we were getting to the warrant together.
Yeah.
I think that's January 2017.
Want me to make a copy and give you this back, or?
Not really, it's kind of moot for me. I'll try and get you, Medway's been through this a couple of times, and the planner of she's head of the planning department, done an excellent job of creating a matrix with action items and all, and that they're implementing, so it might be helpful to look at to give it some context. I'll call her.
All right.
Pete, do you have comments?
No, I was fine with the way that ended up.
And one more there. Mike. I'm not sure if I don't know if you care about this. So you ready?
I was just going to read them, but
Yeah, you
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, just read it.
Yeah. So we don't appreciate their good work.
No, you said it at the end, so I basically just said, you already said it.
We really do appreciate it.
Some of this was editorial. I did this like before Thanksgiving, so now I'm trying to remember what was going on in my head when I put this all in here. I think the biggest thing was the questions that I added at the end.
I'm following along. I don't know why my computer turned the footnote 1 into footnote 11, but there are no hidden 10 footnotes in the
There was a little bit of method to the madness with those questions. I was trying to set this up a little bit where both departments would recognize a certain incentive to try, if there's a possibility to do it by asking those questions. I'm hoping that incentivized, you'd be better off having positive answers to those questions than no answers to questions. So,
Yeah, I'm good with those. Pete?
That's fine with me.
All right, so why don't we,
I can actually, did I already send you guys, this is my comments to,
so we can probably,
I can do a blanket accept and just send you the update if you want.
yeah, do you want to just vote to issue this guidance with Gus's corrections? Date it tonight and we can at least cross one item off of this and have you actually completed it? You want to make a motion,
Can I make
Gus?
a motion or do I have to recuse myself because of my comment? I move that we accept the letter to the COA and Parks and Rec Commission from the Board of Selectmen in regard to collaboration coordination regarding future space needs for Council on Aging and Park and Recreation Department as revised with my comments presented at tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
I just had one little typo type change, and that's it. I'll give that to you as well.
Sure.
Just, there was an extra quotation mark there. I don't know if that was meant to be a colon or it was a quotation mark.
It's probably a colon.
All right. Do we have anything to discuss on the October 29th, 2018 town meeting? Is there any?
I do if you want to do it.
Yeah, no, that's why it's on there.
We partly covered it, and I wasn't trying to drive decisions, I just wanted to put the topics on the table. One of them we've already started talking about with the discussion we just had around the Adams Street project, which is with the overlay district being turned down, with the Hinckley property being turned down, I wanted to just, it's like, all right, so where does that leave us? Mike, you mentioned the Hinckley is in your mind is a 40B. I'm not there yet. As opposed to just selling off the property to a developer to do something useful with it. And the reason I'm not there, maybe we need that for the 40B and maybe that's okay, but on the other hand, if senior housing is what we need, the point I made earlier tonight is that to the extent you try to package senior housing, non-40B, with 40B, what you're doing is you're driving the price up. Now, Kevin made a good point. Yeah, okay, you're driving the density up maybe. One way or the other, you have to figure out a way to let the developer make money. And it seems to me that with the idea of trying to get to, minimize density, not making things any more dense than they need to be, but also trying to get a price point for seniors that's not subsidized.
City? I have a feeling he's trying to find my password for the State Department of Revenue site. The assessors. I think might want to get home.
So anyway, I want to put that on the table, but I'm not sure where we're actually going.
If I can speak to that just briefly. So one of the items on our agenda for the next Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees meeting is this question, right? Are we going to put together a proposal for the Hinckley property for town meeting? And what would it have to look like so that would provide more benefit for achieving our housing production goals, and maybe some more benefit for seniors, be more acceptable for people to that site. Whether we can come up with that or not is a good question. So we're going to see if we can, and if we can, then obviously we'll bring it back and we'll propose that Courtney Starling is going to work on that. It may turn it into a rental type project there, or not an apartment building, but sort of townhouse type rentals that would be senior oriented, that would be easier for people from Medfield to qualify for income wise, because the asset test is different for home ownership. Maybe that won't work at all, in which case I think to your point, then I think we have to, kind of resume the Lot 3 discussion without looking at a separation between Hinckley and Lot 3, and whether, if we're not going to be able to do some sort of housing on the Hinckley, do we look at it from a commercial otherwise standpoint with the two parcels together, which is an additional discussion. I think given all of the work and the recommendation from the hospital committee, I think the Federal Housing Trust wants to take a shot at salvaging that as a senior housing location, given the proximity to the center. And if we can come up with a proposal that would be more acceptable and that would not have, that would literally only apply to that parcel, I suspect we'd have a better shot of persuading town meeting to support it. I think obviously a lot of the concerns around the overlay district were the impacts elsewhere in town from the Hinckley parcel, whereas at least we had a majority in favor of the revised Hinckley without really any kind of background on it, right? It was kind of, well, maybe we could do this. We still had a decent amount of support for it. So I think if we can come up with something else that would be nice for that location, I'd like to see if we can do it, but we don't know if we will. So stay tuned.
The other piece that's going to be important there is the senior housing survey result, which for a number of reasons it's not yet never come to closure on. The second one I wanted to bring up was Article 8, which was the issue of the town clerk conversion from elected to appointed.
He's here tonight, so he's available to weigh in.
Well, the issue, and again, I'm just trying to give topics for us to start mulling over. I'm not trying to get things one way or the other. 2 years ago, the warrant committee basically floated this idea of converting over, and I think took some actions in budgeting for the town clerk that were done in anticipation that that was the direction we would go. We haven't gone in that direction, but now I think that we should at least have a discussion. We've treated the town clerk like a quasi-employee, even though technically the way the town clerk becomes the town clerk is to get elected, but then after that, from an administrative standpoint, they get treated like a town employee, and I think that's...
Except when they don't.
Except when they don't, and that's my point. It's like, this is an elected office. I think we should have a discussion around what we do with an elected official, and I think there's two pieces of that. One piece of it has to do with compensation, that I would actually like to see a little clearer distinction between the compensation of an elected official and the process we use to compensate town employees, because I don't think we should keep going in that direction. And the second one is probably as much a question for Christine and Mike. Had we gone to an appointed position, I think we would have rethought how some work gets done in the town hall. I think we still need to have a discussion around how some work gets done in the town hall, recognizing that this is the case. And part of the thought process there, not that I necessarily think Carol is leaving anytime soon, but at some point Carol will be leaving. So if this is the path we're going, is the elected path, then we have an issue around ensuring continuity. As one town clerk goes and moves on to another town clerk, we have an issue, and we should, I think, try to get in front of that.
So to that end, I mean, I have invited Carol to come.
Okay.
She's on vacation for the first 2 weeks of December, so probably December 18th, to have this discussion.
Yeah.
And to this exact point about how things are organized and how, because the reality is, as benefits get more and more expensive, and as doing all of the things to get more and more expensive, unless we just want to be in a position of sort of perpetual overrides, we're going to have to find a way to deliver some of these services more efficiently, right? And so in the town clerk, you have full-time employee, well compensated. I'm sure she thinks she could be better compensated, but with a relatively narrow set of responsibilities, right? And so part of the rationale around having an appointed town clerk is that you would have the ability to have more people share that work when it's really busy. And then the town clerk would be able to help out during times when that office is not as busy, right? Because you've got kind of the capital T, capital C town clerk functions, right? Running the elections, doing the birth certificates, the dog licenses, that sort of thing. Then the other piece of it is kind of the customer service piece of it, sort of just having somebody there if you come into town hall and you need something. And that is the function that I think we got to try to find better synergies so that the people who come, when you come into town hall and you need help, the people who do that, we got to do that more efficiently if we can. And then also we have to look at, within the town clerk role as the things have evolved, like for example, with the website. The website strikes me as something that in the 21st century, the town clerk should have some responsibility for the website in terms of getting stuff posted up there, getting information up there, chasing down minutes, making sure people, that's really a town clerk function. And maybe that's got to be a charter revision combined with, more compensation for the town clerk for doing the additional stuff. I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's some of the stuff we have to talk about with Christine and have Carol in to get her thoughts on how it works. Because you do have this odd situation where she's an elected official, she's in town hall, she doesn't really report to anybody. But, when she goes away, people in town hall that work for other people have to kind of fill in and cover, or she's got to come back, or whatever else it is. And so all that will be up for discussion on the 18th, and so she'll be in at that point. Hopefully the 18th, we said December, but I think she's on vacation for other meetings.
Okay, good. Then the third one I had was Article 11, which was the shifting of money over for from the manganese well. And the issue there isn't to do with the shifting of the money, but the one concern I am paying attention to, and it was behind my questions for Mo tonight, was as the redevelopment of State Hospital property moves ahead, we have this unanswered question still, or for the time being, around whether the town's fundamental infrastructure, water and sewer, has the capacity to support what we might do there. I don't think we want to go down the path of redeveloping the state hospital and then finding out 6 months into that process or a year into that process that the pipes are too small. We need to get out in front of that, make sure that, as I look at it, we need to know what the situation is, and we have to then do whatever it's going to take to be able to support whatever it is we wind up doing at the state hospital.
Per capita water use is just as important.
Yeah. So there were just three things I walked away, at least two out of those three, I walked away surprised at how the vote went, and then said, okay, I have to adjust my thinking, because where I thought we were headed isn't where we're now headed.
Yeah, the senior housing one is a vexing question, right? I mean, it's and I've thought about that one a lot, because we spent so much time on that overlay district to try to, respond to the concerns that people would have, and I don't know if it was a question of did we not do a good enough job presenting it, in the sense that was there enough, or when we had outreach sessions and nobody came, was there just not a lot of interest in it? Right. So when we had meetings on this, we had presentations, and 4 people were there. Maybe there just isn't. There may be a small vocal group that's concerned about it, but not enough to actually move action.
Yeah,
You did have a precursor because it was a vote that was somewhat innocuous, but was a negative vote at the annual town meeting from all that stuff that was filed as citizen petitions. There was one that was like innocuous, and we were willing to let it go, but it went down, so.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to flag those as
Yeah.
3 things that I walked out of the town meeting with.
Do you have any post-special town meeting thoughts?
Well, no, I was fairly confused by some of those votes, and especially the senior housing one. But I
Yeah.
thought,
And then on some of the
would-
process concerns that the warrant committee raised, I've been in touch with them and have, I basically told them that with respect to a potential special town meeting for the hospital, that if they have some sort of schedule in mind, they should tell us. And so we can try to meet whatever they're gonna need. I know they've been following along with that, but to try to keep them posted and aware of, some of the members were not aware of all the stuff we've been working on in this area, so I was somewhat surprised when they said, well, we didn't know this was going on. And I was like, well, we've been talking about this stuff for months. And so hopefully they will give us some sort of an outline of what they'd want in terms of, okay, if we're gonna have a special town meeting in the hospital in March or in May or whatever, we'd like 6 weeks to do this and
Yeah,
8 weeks to do
okay.
that. So we wanna have these number of meetings, we wanna get this in advance, and so we can understand what that is, apart from what the charter requirements are for a special town meeting. All right, the other discussion item is our January 2019 meeting schedule.
Before we go there, is there a reason we skipped the Medfield Permanent Firefighters Union vacation accrual?
I haven't gone back up to it yet. I was
Oh, okay.
going through the discussion items, then I was
Okay.
gonna go back to the
Okay,
the
great.
action
Okay,
items.
yep.
January 2019 meeting schedule. I was gonna suggest that we meet, obviously, the first Tuesday in January is January 1st. And even though sadly the number of college bowl games has been reduced by that much, so we probably aren't gonna wanna meet on January 1st. So I was gonna suggest, just given that we'd be heading into town meeting season and given the issues with February around school vacation, we meet on the 8th, the 15th, and the 29th. So we do 3 meetings in January. And then in February, we meet on the 5th and the 19th. The 19th being during school vacation week, which I'm not going anywhere. I don't know if you guys are anywhere, but
that's fine.
other people do go places, and so for our adoring public, we don't want to make it difficult. So I was going to propose, so January 8th, 15th, 29th, and February 5th and the 19th.
That works for me this far out.
I think that's fine with me.
Okay for you, Christine? Evelyn? Mark?
Who knows?
That's a Blue Moon Board of Selectmen meeting. Third full moon of the season.
Because I'm also anticipating that we will, probably one of those meetings will be, if not one of the ones in December, will be devoted. The other wild card is the RFI return in the hospital. And when that comes back, we should have that for our meeting on December 11th. And so, right, because the return date is December 3rd?
Their agenda says they're having their meeting to discuss it on the 4th, and then they're getting ready for your meeting on the 18th.
The 18th.
Yeah.
18th,
That's fine.
to bring it to you guys on the 18th.
Okay.
That's on the current schedule.
We're
consistent with
we're
the-
meeting on the 11th and the 18th.
Right.
Yeah.
The 18th is fine. So we'll discuss on the 18th what the RFIs say and what effect that, if any, that has on our meeting schedule.
So do you have any thoughts on when you're going to open and close the warrant for the annual?
Yeah, we usually do it in January?
Yeah, we're already have that all laid out. We'll get you a copy.
Thanks.
All right, back up to action items. We are requested to vote to sign an agreement with the Medfield Permanent Firefighters Union regarding vacation accrual. Christine, you want to?
So you might remember this, we talked about this actually in executive session over the summer. We were trying to, I keep joking with Chief Carrico that he's the new sheriff and he keeps reminding me that's the wrong side of the building. But when Chief Carrico took over, he determined, in reviewing all of the records, that our firefighters had been allowed to accrue time greater than what we allow either by the personnel plan or the collective bargaining agreement. He and I met several times to talk about the best way to do this. It's not something we want to have the books on the books in terms of liability. So we came up with an agreement with the firefighters union to pay out the vacation time that was over and above what they were allowed to carry over. Given that they were our new structure of our department, we have been allowed to give them more vacation time. I don't mean more as in we gave them more time. They were able to actually take the time that they had. When we had 2 people out on injured duty and we had 2 people per shift, we didn't allow any vacation time. So that's why we felt the buyout was appropriate, because they were not allowed to take their vacation time, which is why they were allowed to carry it over. So actually, out of this agreement, out of the 8 firefighters we had, only 2 are eligible for a buyout. Everybody else has used their time down.
Okay.
And the union did sign it in October.
I have a question.
Yeah, do you have a microphone?
I can speak loud, though.
The people at home can't hear you. It's for the people 3 hours and 5 minutes in still watching.
Stacy Bazinet from 30 Oriole Road. So I had a question about this. I work in a private sector, and there's a very structured HR department where we review PTO hours for people to ensure that no one really is in the situation where you lose a significant amount of time or have really prevent people so that they take the PTO that they're entitled to. And I did notice that there's some pretty high numbers there, clearly. Appreciate their service to the town. So this is a one-time opportunity for us to say thank you for foregoing all of your PTO to support the team. Really just looking to see what the actions are to make sure that we have enough support going forward, that no one's in a position like this again where they're not able to spend time with their families because we've needed them on the team. And what structure are you putting in place for HR to make sure that this can be monitored better so people don't actually get to the point where I saw some of these had a potential for 10 weeks of PTO that they may be losing.
So we won't allow anybody to lose it. Obviously, under the Wage Act, you can't lose that time, especially where we ordered them held over and didn't allow them to go home. So they are entitled to that payout. We have a new structure in the department. We have a new chief who's monitoring it very closely, so it should not happen again. I can't guarantee you they won't be held over on certain shifts, and they won't be, they won't be told they can't take vacation time under certain instances like that.
I think that's appropriate considering the field they're in. That wasn't more of my concern. More of my concern was just to make sure that we had something in place, that this wasn't something that came up regularly, because it does seem, although kind of them to agree to really kind of cancel plans with family to help support the needs of the town, there should certainly be some additional oversight so it doesn't get to the point where we're talking about paying out almost 2.5 weeks for one of the individuals.
Thank you.
I just wanted to be sure I understood both what I heard and what I'm reading. You said there were 8, and it's down to 2. There's 7 names here. Does that mean 5 of these are off?
There are only 2 that are taking a payout amount. It's less than $4,000.
Okay, so will we update, if we're gonna sign something, we should probably update that to have the table up to date. And then I was just trying to understand, I'll take the top line there. If the current is over, 417 hours and the buyout is 96, does that mean then the current becomes 321? So it's not like.
It's actually less than that, because this person, now that under the new structure, has been allowed to take, able to take vacation time.
So I guess what I'm really saying, the buyout hours that I'm seeing here are what they're being paid for, but those
Correct.
hours are they're taking 1 for 1 against what the current is. It's not, well, you had this, we'll pay you 25 cents on the dollar, or something like that.
No,
Okay,
full payout.
got it. Okay.
Does it have anything to do with what's going on at the board?
Okay, thanks.
What was the name of your second grade teacher, Gus?
I've been getting a lot of spam email that I can't account for.
I can't tell the difference between Pawtucket, Patuxent, and Pawcatuck.
That's right.
Mike is opening up new credit cards in our name. It's going to be but a world trip afterwards. Wait, what is this?
What's your last four?
All right. So, well, and thanks to Chief Carrico for working this out and figuring this out. And
Yes.
hopefully, to your point, correcting this going forward. So, good job
Yes.
by the chief.
They are now, everyone is aware of what's in the collective bargaining agreement for their carryover for vacation and how they will have to use it. He will make sure they are on top of that.
Excellent.
So let me, given that there's a signature on this, is it administratively easier for us to sign this as it stands?
Yes.
Understanding that
Yep.
the actual numbers are different. We're not guaranteeing these numbers because the numbers have changed because of what they've
Right.
done.
No, you're signing
This
their
is-
payout as of that.
This is almost like a max.
Correct.
Okay, so, you ready?
I think you would sign it, please.
I move that we authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to sign the firefighters' agreement addressing vacation accrual adjustments.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
Okay. So next item is to vote to approve and authorize us to sign the contract with Town Administrator Christine Trueweiler as worked out in executive session before the meeting. That contract will become public upon final signing an agreement with Ms. Trueweiler and final review from her based on the discussions that we had in negotiations through the executive session. So we'll vote to sign and approve it, assuming we agree to the form that was agreed upon in executive session. Once it's signed, it'll be publicly available. So
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the contract with Christine Trueweiler, subject to the revisions that we discussed in our closed session at the beginning of this, prior to this meeting.
Do we want to have that be approved and signed?
to approve and authorize us to sign.
I move that we approve and authorize the Board of Selectmen to sign the contract with Christine Trueweiler, subject to the revisions that we discussed in the closed meeting prior to this open meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, license and permit consent agenda, 2 items. We're requested to vote to grant a parade permit for the Christmas parade to be held on Saturday, December 8th. We are also cordially invited to participate in the December 7th tree lighting festivity, and we are requested by the Medfield Lions Club for permission to post signs promoting, well, that's hard, permissions to post signs promoting Christmas tree sales at their new location, the American Legion parking lot. Any questions on either of the consent agenda items?
I move that we approve the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
And in the letter from memo for the Christmas parade, former selectmen were invited as well. Evelyn,
They usually don't.
they usually don't, but did you pass it on to them?
No, it's
Would you-
John Harney.
Ann Thompson, Mark Fisher.
Ed Beard.
And Richard DeSorger. Let's haul him in.
Well,
from
he's
Cape
not.
Cod. Come on, let's get him. You come.
Is Paul not in town anymore?
Tell him the
Pardon?
current selectman will wear antlers and pull him in a sled.
I want to see that.
So will you send him an email, Evelyn? Just let him
Sure.
know? Just in case. Richard may be marching the Mashpee holiday parade. All right, we have town administrator update, meals tax distribution. I don't know if Mike really wants to talk about that or how we talk about
I don't think he wants to talk about it tonight.
that.
Too busy processing Bitcoin
He's
transactions.
slightly worried about him in there.
We're replacing a bunch of sports bets. Twin Rivers Casino, right. All right, minutes. We have corrections to the October 2nd minutes from Gus and from me. Any further questions, corrections to October 2nd?
Nope.
All right, get a motion to,
Move that we approve the meeting minutes as revised by me and the chairman for October 2nd meeting.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
And October 30th, we had comments from Gus, which I thought were, I definitely looked at them. I don't think I had any changes to them. Do you have any changes to Gus's comments for the 30th? All right, a motion for the 30th.
I move that we accept the meeting minutes of October 30th as revised by the comments that I had submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Yep. All right, Evelyn, thank you again for getting those to us. Review action lists.
We should have the latest ones for November
Did you
3rd.
send us the action list?
I did.
You did, yeah.
I did.
Okay.
I didn't see
You
them.
have a copy for us?
I didn't, no, I sent them out.
I emailed them out to
Yeah,
everybody.
I would have made copies if I'd known I needed them. I have one copy. You can,
I definitely
You
looked
can
at
keep
it.
it.
No, I just didn't print it out. Oh, yeah, I saw this.
so there were, I think there was one action item at the very bottom that I added, if I remember right, about a month ago. The issue is, we've got a lot of items on the action item list. Most of them on the status, that blue column, are identified as proposed, and I carried everything that we as a board had not actually talked about and accepted, because this is a kitchen sink list. This was a list partly from what Pete had, partly from what Christine had, partly from what I had built up, partly from what we had moved from the town goals onto the action item list. We've never actually been deliberate about accepting these actions. So it's a longer list than it probably should be. They're organized by departments. And I think the thought was that when we had time in meetings, we would work our way down this list to see whether we wanted to keep the action item list or the action item or delete it, with a goal toward probably culling the list. Speaking personally, the two reactions I have to, there's too many action items for one thing, but the two general reactions I have, that in some cases, they felt a little bit to me like we were telling departments, we were giving them specific things they needed to do without it necessarily being tied to some issue of particular concern to the selectmen. And the other one is, in a couple of places, we weren't specific enough about what we really wanted. So if you want an action item that says you got to communicate more, that's kind of like not going to help anybody. So we just have to work our way through this list on perhaps on a meeting that
Yeah,
doesn't.
not at 10:15. I mean, would it make sense for, I'm trying to think how to do this efficiently. Would it make sense for our next meeting if we all went through the list and kind of marked off whether we thought they should be on there or not, and then added any additions? Nothing occurs to me immediately to put on the list.
Yeah.
And I think it is useful to kind of have a place where we have stuff that we've talked about and talked about doing. But I think to your point, I think we need to come up with a couple of categories about sort of stuff we've talked about that we don't want to forget that we've talked about. Sort of generally, whether that's proposed or discussed or something like that. And I think, and then things that we actually want to direct the department to do.
I'm going to make a suggestion for us to consider, and Pete, it would be for you to go through this list. And the reason I say that is that I think most of the items that are on this list are yours. But I think really what we need is a philosophical discussion about what constitutes an action that should be on the list. And I think you came at it with a different philosophy than I would come at it. So if we just all look at it, we're going to wind up with that difference in philosophy, where I actually think if we started with you, most of these already are yours. I've stated my concern was that in some cases we're being too prescriptive about what a department needs to do, telling it what it needs to do, and in other cases have been too vague about actually what we want. And those are the ones around communication. So I'm saying that respectfully, not trying to challenge you. It's just in terms of the way you thought about it.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to go through it. It was really a list that was, it was Richard DeSorga's list of items and my list of items.
Okay.
And a lot of the effort was to make sure that things just didn't fall off the radar of the selectmen, which is things, what I noticed happening over the years, that we would talk about things, we'd agree to do things, and then we would just never get it done, and it would never get back to it. And so it was just helpful to have a list.
And I think as to some of those punch list items, that are sort of the more specific items about lights and things like that, I think all those kind of smaller issues, but quality of life issues that are not unimportant. I think that the most efficient process, once we get down to what we actually want on the list, is once we have department meetings, that it's something that can be circulated to the department heads, and we can get feedback from the department heads. It could be a column on there where the department head says, can't do it, too expensive, need to discuss, on our list, gonna happen, that just so we know, and we have some assurance that you don't sort of make a request and go out into the ether. And it also, there's a lot of these requests as well, ultimately come back from people in town who've raised questions, and you'd like to just be able to get back to them and say, okay, yes, we've put this on here, it's duly noted that you want a sidewalk here, and we're working on a sidewalk plan, and it's gonna be a while, or, yes, we're aware of the issue, right, and we're gonna work on the issue, and we'll, there's a resource allocation issue within the departments. I think, does that make sense to you, Christine, that if
I think it's a good
eventually we get to that point, so we can get the feedback back, and as to those items, and then as to some things that are kind of within our control, maybe that's just a separate category, things we actually need to do as a board. So you have the thing on the side bylaw, and all. Those things could be a different category. Here's things we need to work on, somebody on the board needs to work on it. We need to make sure this comes up as an agenda.
That left-hand column is the one that would make it easy to do that, because you just identify who's responsible.
Right.
We can expand that list however we want.
Right. Because some of the, and I think it's an easier way, hopefully, if we do it well, it's an easier way than just us emailing department heads with particular requests, right? Because I can imagine that if it's done that way, the department head might feel a need to be more responsive to one of us than maybe the request itself merits, just because it's coming from one of us. And not to say they shouldn't be responsive, but it's important to get, you can't look at anything in a vacuum and say, we want this thing to be done, because I drove by it and it looked really bad. And then you feel like the department head feels, well, I gotta do it, but I got 6 things that are really more important. And so you can get a little bit of feedback from them saying, yep, I noted, can't get to it now, but it's on the list, right? We'll get to it in the spring, or when we have a little bit of time. And to your point, Pete, then, we know it's just not being forgotten. Right? So I think that's what you don't want to have happen, where things are just sort of forgotten because nobody actually remembers that we're supposed to do it, like, whatever our Department of Revenue passwords are, or whatever's going on back over there. All right.
Easy one.
Right. All right, Selectmen report, Pete.
I would just mention that the Medfield Foundation has given their inaugural round of grants from their legacy fund, and there's going to be an event this week to celebrate those grants, and that's it.
Yes.
There's another thing. The Medfield Foundation is also running the Angel Run on Sunday, 12:30. Come on down, walk, run, fun time for the family.
I'll be there.
Already mentioned, I went to the first informational session on plastic bag thing. It was a small turnout, but they've done a lot of good information. I had a question for you all. The MAPC has this breakfast meeting on November 30th, this Friday. It sounds like a worthwhile meeting to go to. I'm tied up with a client. I can't make it.
I signed up to, I put it on my calendar.
Okay.
They didn't, I don't think they had a RSVP.
They may not. I would have gone, but I can't. So I just was hoping somebody would be going. I'm glad to hear you are.
I can't go either.
And then the other one that I think we all got copied on, this was from Sarah Raposa, talking about the Medfield State Hospital Strategic Master Plan, winning the Project Planning Award, like Project Plan of the Year. And just wanted to acknowledge that the committee had won it, or that the...
This from the Massachusetts?
Yes, they've asked us to actually hold off. They haven't issued their full press release about announcing it, so they've asked us to hold off.
Never mind, everyone, never mind.
You heard nothing.
No, sorry. All right.
Did I tell you about...
They will have a very good press release.
Did I tell anybody about the new X-Men movie?
Don't worry, everybody's already gone to bed.
Right. Yeah. Right. All right. Just a couple of things. Affordable Housing Trust Board meeting on Thursday, this December 6th. I think the folks from Mayrock and the Legion are going to be there again. As of now, the meeting is still at the DPW building. I don't know if we might, Thursday, December 6th, our regular first Thursday of the month meeting. We're also going to be talking about putting together some initiatives for projects that kind of are originated with the town, sort of things that we think are good ideas to try to convince someone to pick up with instead of just responding to developers. So we've got Courtney put together a list of 20 potential locations around town, and to just kind of, she's going to analyze those to see if there are some where we might put out saying, here's 3 projects that the trust thinks would be useful to do, anybody interested in these kind of projects. So she's going to put that together. We're also going to talk further about the Hinckley property and the rest of it at that meeting. And of the 3 of us last Saturday, we're at another Eagle Scout Court of Honor with Troop 89, 4 young men honored as Eagle Scouts. It's always impressive and uplifting to go, and it was a great event. I'm sure we'll have a few more as we get through the winter, but that was good. And I don't think I have anything else. Christine, anything?
I have nothing tonight.
All right, Mark, anything? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.